T audiobook title Sorcery Monarch 01 to 359 by Falcon Par 03. His kind of precaution had already been necessary several times. In this battle, 4 soldiers had died. Their bodies would be returned to Bay Village for a memorial service, after which they would be cremated and buried. From now on, Angela would handle these memorials and reward ceremonies. Ding! Your forces have killed a total of 367 gnolls, earning 16,500 experience points and 2 skill points. Ding! You've achieved a great victory against superior numbers, earning 2,000 bonus experience points and 2 skill points. Ding! You've changed the fate of 536 individuals, earning 820 fate coins. Your current fate coin total is 1,500. Matthew was extremely pleased with the experience points gained from this battle. Experience points were becoming increasingly valuable, though their accumulation had some unusual limitations, forcing Matthew to be cautious. After all, he couldn't simply provoke fights just to farm experience points, leading to the loss of his soldiers and subordinates. They could generate far greater value alive. After mentally calculating how to allocate his experience points, Matthew turned to see the kobolds feasting noisily. The sound of whips cracking filled the air. Goldfang and Silverfang would need several more days to fully tame these kobolds. However, once this 1,000-strong kobold force was properly trained, Matthew was confident he could begin developing the kobold mine. Due to their unique physiology, using humans to mine would inevitably lead to various occupational diseases. So kobolds were destined to play a critical role in Matthew's development plans. With that in mind, Matthew carefully instructed Goldfang and Silverfang, following the guidance provided by the system. Kobolds may prefer dark environments, but cleanliness is still important. Ensure regular cleaning to prevent disease. Maintaining a clean living environment will reduce the spread of germs and significantly improve their lifespan and overall health. Make sure all kobold eggs are centrally monitored and cared for. This will greatly increase their survival and hatching rates. Goldfang and Silverfang tried their best to understand, forcing themselves to remember Matthew's words. After witnessing how easily Matthew destroyed the once powerful Gnoll tribe, they had already begun to place him on the same level as Yaya. Matthew didn't expect them to fully understand, but he wanted to establish the concept so they could better manage the kobolds. Naturally, specific tasks would be handled by Ralph, who would select specialized personnel for the job. However, finding a proper home for over 1,000 kobolds was essential. Matthew had initially considered assigning the kobolds to Bay Village sewer system, having them maintain and expand it. But now, he believed that to rapidly expand the kobold population, he needed to provide them with a more comfortable and spacious living environment. Noticing Goldfang and Silverfang's confusion, Matthew patiently drew out a blueprint for an underground structure and used the copy spell to make several duplicates. Start digging according to this plan. Extend the excavation deeper into the valley. Food and supplies will be delivered soon. For now, focus on getting the kobolds to cooperate. This arrangement will benefit both sides. Goldfang and Silverfang nodded, though they still didn't fully understand. With their limited intelligence, they couldn't quite grasp Matthew's diagrams. Nevertheless, Matthew's respectful attitude toward the kobolds, showing no disdain or disregard, deeply moved them. They eagerly thumped their chests and promised, "We'll get them in line right away." At the sound of food being promised, the kobolds burst into excited cheers. Even those who were whipped seemed content. Seeing the average intelligence of the kobolds was no higher than 4, Matthew refrained from explaining further and simply nodded. Perhaps there was some truth to the saying, ignorance is bliss. Chapter 70, Honor and Aspirations. Chapter 70, Honor and Aspirations. The roaring flames whooshed as they burned. Gradually, the bodies were engulfed, and the family members nearby couldn't hold back their sobs. The hot glow of the fire reddened the faces of everyone around. Angela, with a solemn expression, called out in a low, far-reaching voice, "Hajira, Frail, Kyuko, Rasnin, they are true heroes. They fought bravely to protect Bay Village to protect others. Until their final moments, they never took a step back, by order of the Lord. We will build a hero's tomb in the center of the village and lay them to rest there. Furthermore, we will record this battle in Bay Village's history, documenting everyone's efforts and their sacrifices. Our descendants will look up to them as examples. At the same time, the families of the fallen will receive a one-time compensation of 5 gold coins and permanent lease rights to 20 acres of land. Each family will also receive 10 silver coins per month for living expenses. Children who have not yet come of age will receive focused training in the territory until they reach adulthood." Angela's voice wasn't particularly loud, but with the aid of a voice amplification spell, it reached everyone's ears clearly. Hearing about the unprecedented heroes' cemetery, the eyes of every soldier present brightened, and their hearts filled with pride and a sense of honor. Many who had embarked on the path of a professional did so to improve their lives, to change their fate. But almost all of them aspired to have their names remembered, to leave a lasting legacy. Now, Bay Village and their lord had fulfilled this deep desire, and every soldier felt a surge of awe and exhilaration. The families of the fallen looked equally incredulous. Old Village Chieffield, who had taken out a cigarette but never lit it, opened his mouth slightly, sighed, and blinked hard to hold back his tears, as past memories filled his mind. Compensation. What compensation? Sacrificing for the Netheral Empire is your honor. Fighting for the Lord is your duty. Sob. My son, didn't you say you'd bring him back? The village belongs to the Lord, why go to such lengths? Just take care of yourself, isn't that enough? Don't go, it's too dangerous. Just go and die, don't come back. Grandpa Village Chief. Where did my father go? Old Village Chieffield, who had long seen through men, events, and enemies, couldn't see through the Netheral Empire or the cold-hearted lords. Nor could he understand those praised as great ones, the grand arcanists. They always stood high above, never deigning to look down at the people struggling with survival and death. They had world-shattering powers, yet they couldn't even rid the land of kobolds and murlocs. They could lift a city into the sky, yet the tools used by commoners were still nothing more than sticks tied to wood. Matthew, the new lord, had shown an entirely different attitude and vision. Would he be able to maintain this? He will. We won't let him down. Clenching his teeth, Oldfield silently observed the murmuring crowd, clearly sensing their thoughts. They were moved. Thoroughly moved. Not far away, curious adventurers exchanged glances, astonished by the scene before them. Even the honor-bound Ladrin Empire doesn't offer such generous compensation, right? Not just the Ladrin Empire, even the wealthiest human empire in the south, Falsico, hasn't done anything like this. What do you think? When our adventuring days are over, should we move to Bay Village? Who knows how long this will last? Maybe it's all a scam. I think it's genuine. I've never seen peasants in any territory work with such drive. It's completely different. This lord is offering far more than most. I think joining Bay Village wouldn't be a bad idea right now. Cough, cough, let's not think too far ahead. We've just about scouted the outskirts of the gloomy forest, and it's almost time to start hunting. The quests in this territory are strange. How could they make all the gathered information public? Isn't that great? It helps us avoid danger and leads to greater rewards. Yes, you found that whole patch of moonlight flowers the other day, thanks to the map. But it's interesting how they only collect mature materials, and even use magic to check if new seeds have been planted. Right, if you don't replant, there's a heavy penalty. I saw one unlucky guy pay the price. That way, the resources are replenished continuously and everyone benefits. I've never had such a relaxed adventure. Who hasn't? The adventurers eagerly joined the conversation, with much of the discussion revolving around Matthew's unprecedented kindness as a lord. In their eyes, Matthew's actions were simply a result of his benevolent nature. Meanwhile, these clever and bold adventurers, having scouted the area in recent days, had already discovered signs of isolated trolls. They were planning to cooperate and attempt some hunts in the coming days. After all, even though collaboration might reduce their earnings, it greatly improved their safety. Yet they still harbored doubts about the high bounty on trolls. What if the Lord didn't pay? Compared to the adventurers, the temporary residents of Bay Village had a different perspective. Tom, let's give it a shot tomorrow. If we pass the test and become reserve soldiers, we won't have to worry about making a living. Labor and plentiful food had helped the once scrawny Jiffin finally look healthier. Across from him, Tom, who was busy eating, obediently nodded. Since childhood, Jiffin had always been the one making decisions. All Tom had to do was follow along. Jiffin would never lead him astray. Little Jixiang, however, widened her eyes. She seemed to have more concerns, asking hesitantly, "Brother, will it be dangerous?" Chewing his black bread carefully and mixing it with fish soup before swallowing, Jiffin thought about the information he had gathered in recent days. With a firm tone, he replied, "What job isn't dangerous? Even farming in the wildlands can be deadly. Some poor soul nearly burned to death, but the guards saved him just in time. In the past, we didn't have the chance to wield power. Now that we have this opportunity, we must seize it." Little Jixiang bit her lip. Though far more mature than most her age, she recalled the fearful days when their lives hung by a thread, and she nodded in agreement. "You're right, brother. I've heard from my classmates in Bay Village that the territory will be conducting a test soon. If you have a talent for magic, there's a good chance you'll be selected for professional training in the academy. Those with exceptional talent might even be personally taken in as the Lord's apprentice." Seeing the little girl mutter to herself, her once gaunt face slowly regaining the softness of childhood, Jiffin silently nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope as he encouraged her. "We'll work hard and see if luck favors us this time." Announcement: a big thank you to O. Brown for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 71. Hunting Trolls Chapter 71. Hunting trolls at the break of dawn, lively shouts already spread across Bay Village. Thanks to the abundance of food, everyone had grown much stronger. The main reason driving them to work so hard wasn't just the generous wages, but also a newfound sense of belonging. Near the village's military camp, many attempted to lift several rows of 100-kilogram stone locks. Only a few succeeded, joining the next round of training assessments. The rest shook their heads in disappointment, returning to their tasks. Many resolved that as soon as they were strong enough, they would try again. After all, the conditions and treatment of reserve soldiers was something everyone envied. Emerging from a low tunnel, Jiffin tightened the sandbags on his back and glanced at the figures behind him before crouching down. He was in the light, so there was no need to rush. Ahead were several rows of wooden houses with open windows and doors, where 2 or 3 figures patrolled the perimeter. Suppressing his slightly racing heart, Jiffin successfully avoided the searching eyes and darted out from the shadows. He carefully bypassed the traps buried underground, stealthily tiptoeing forward. Several times he was nearly caught, but skillfully used obstacles to evade detection. Nearby, the sound of another contestant being captured echoed. Seizing the opportunity, Jiffin slipped into the last wooden house. Through the window, he could see the finish line not far away. If he could cross the white line just 10 meters ahead, he would successfully join the reserve soldiers. Just then, Jiffin noticed a slightly hunched figure sitting in front of the white line. Instinctively, Jiffin froze, sensing danger. He didn't let his guard down, even though the figure's back was turned. He cautiously hid in the shadows, not looking directly at the figure, waiting patiently for the right moment. Time ticked by second. Jiffin suppressed his growing anxiety, silently counting down. As an aspiring rogue, patience and concealment were his greatest assets for survival. With only 30 seconds left, at that moment, more than a dozen impatient contestants suddenly charged forward. Jiffin remained motionless, watching as the others rushed ahead. He remembered clearly that there had been 50 participants, and 24 had been eliminated. The current group only numbered 13. While the assessment outside the village camp was in full swing, the adventurers heading towards the gloomy forest looked on with curiosity. Is Bay Village still recruiting soldiers? They must be nearing 200 by now, right? Who knows what the Lord's thinking? He probably believes the dangers in the gloomy forest are still significant and wants to bolster the military. Even reserve soldiers get pretty decent treatment. Stop overthinking it. Focus on how to catch a troll. Our target isn't far this time. There are 3 of them in total, and with 30 of us we should be enough. They left early this morning, and it looks like they're planning to go deeper into the gloomy forest for a bigger haul. No, I heard they're going after 5 trolls at once. With 50 or so people, it should be enough. It's rare to see so many adventurers working together. Who could disagree? What do you think of the vitality potions sold in Bay Village? They are pretty effective. Slightly better than basic healing potions. The soldiers can vouch for that, and some adventurers tested them too. No wonder the Sir family's lord has such an ace up his sleeve. Their lively discussion fell silent as they entered the gloomy forest. These were seasoned adventurers, and they didn't underestimate their foes, even with a wealth of information. Loud-mouthed adventurers had long since died off. Those who survived were the cautious veterans. Following the information provided by Bay Village, they passed by the bustling logging camp. Around 20 or 30 large carts, loaded with timber, were being transported to the village's lumber mill. Smelling the lingering scent of blood in the air, they quickly suppressed their shock and hurried towards their destination. Most regular adventurers excelled at bullying kobolds and murlocs. But when it came to creatures like trolls, unless absolutely necessary, they avoided confrontation due to the low rewards. For mid-tier adventurers, who were usually the captains of small adventuring teams, their average level hovered around 3, occasionally including a few level 1 or 2 newcomers. The average challenge level of trolls was 4, and sometimes elite troll berserkers appeared, creatures only mid-tier adventurers could handle. The fighting strength of hundreds of trolls was terrifying. Most adventurers wouldn't feel confident about winning. This also underscored Bay Village's military strength, capable of easily defeating adventurers. As they passed the cobbled mining area, they spotted a patrol of soldiers. Beside them, the muscular dragonborn kobold Goldtooth was overseeing the digging efforts of over 1,000 kobolds. The adventurers, intrigued, quickly abandoned any foolish thoughts and hurried on towards their goal. Goldtooth glanced at their retreating figures, baring his sharp teeth in what seemed like a cold grin. Nearby, a carefree deer munched on tender leaves. The watchful mother deer chewed her food while staying alert, ready to flee at the slightest disturbance. Chris gave them a brief glance, then quietly adjusted his breathing as he stealthily circled the tree. Caution and care were the reasons he had survived as a decoy for so long. He had accepted this dangerous job to earn more money, but that didn't mean he intended to die. Thanks to his refined skills and expert stealth, he avoided all the animals along the way, carefully approaching a stone forest. As soon as he got close, the stench of rot hit him, and scattered bones of various colors littered the area. Even starving hyenas wouldn't dare approach this place. The overwhelming stench clearly marked it as a troll den. Pushing aside his fear and forcing himself not to think about his terrifying memories, Chris steadied his breathing and adjusted his composure. He could faintly hear the troll's grunts and quarrels. Raising his hand, he made several gestures towards the air. The adventurers in the distance perked up. Acting as their temporary leader, Alice signaled for them to follow the plan while musing to herself. It seems Bay Village information was not only accurate but this detailed too. Could it really be that Lord Matthew's only goal is to clear out the dangers of the gloomy forest? That's impossible. The gloomy forest is massive. Whether it's kobolds or trolls, they'll just keep coming back. Alice had no idea that Matthew was focused on the endless source of experience points. Seeing that everyone was ready, Alice shook off her doubts and called out in a clear voice, "Let's begin. Whether we eat meat or chew black bread this year depends on this fight." A bright red cloth waved in the air, and Chris, seeing it, pulled out a black metal sphere from his pocket. It was a goblin bomb, a device crafted by halfling engineers. With a loud bang, the sound of the bomb was far more intimidating than its actual destruction. Amid the troll's screeches, several hulking figures emerged from the dust, charging towards Chris. As soon as he had thrown the goblin bomb, Chris had already started sprinting away. Chapter 72, Madness. Chapter 72, Madness. Listening to the roars getting closer behind him, Chris gasped for breath and pushed himself to run faster. 3 hulking trolls stared hungrily at Chris as they closed in on him. Ever since they were driven out by the Rotten Moss clan, they hadn't had a full meal, nearly starving to madness. As they howled deafeningly and saw Chris slowing down, the trolls grew more excited, neglecting the ground beneath their feet. Whoosh! The 2 leading trolls stepped on a pile of leaves Chris had safely passed, and with the sound of snapping branches, their massive bodies plummeted into a pit. Chris, rolling clumsily on the ground, didn't look back as he quickly took cover behind a thick tree trunk. He vividly remembered a hapless soul he once knew who had escaped the range of a troll's attacks, only to be split in half by a heavy log thrown by the creature. But soon the cheers of his companions reached his ears. "Well done, Chris. Haha, 2 down at once, only 1 left now. Oldfield's method really works. No wonder trolls rarely attack Bay Village. Hurry up and take down that last one." The chaotic chatter slowly brought Chris back from his oxygen-deprived daze. Did it work? Only 1 left. Carefully turning his head, Chris saw a flurry of arrows and ranged attacks raining down on the roaring troll. The seasoned adventurers clearly had no intention of engaging the troll in close combat, instead depleting its strength from a distance, letting it blade out. Trolls are incredibly strong. Without a mid-tier warrior, never engage them head-on. Bleed them first. Chris could tell everyone was following Oldfield's strategy. After all, traps were a perfect way to deal with trolls, and no adventurer in their right mind would want to fight a troll up close. The troll, bristling with arrows, grew increasingly weak. It swung its wooden club wildly, unable to land a hit on the pests that kept their distance, fear gripping its mind until it finally turned to flee. Chris let out a long breath, knowing the troll didn't stand a chance. Whoosh! Before the troll could take 2 steps, a large net hidden beneath the leaves sprang up, ensnaring the creature and hoisting it into the air. The troll struggled violently, but with blood still pouring from its wounds, it quickly weakened and failed to tear through the thick rope of the net. Nice! Oldfield's gear works wonders. All this for less than 5 gold coins. A tall adventurer next to Alice chuckled as he shot another arrow at the now helpless troll hanging in midair. Watching the troll grow visibly weaker, Alice called out in a crisp voice, "All right, everyone stop. Dead trolls aren't worth much. A live one fetches 50 gold coins. Wrap it up in the net, tie down its arms and legs, and be careful. I don't want any fools getting hurt now." Under Alice's orders, the adventurers, both nervous and exhilarated, rushed to work. Dozens of them tied the captured troll into a tight bundle. Chris stepped forward and patiently pulled out the bloodletting arrows embedded in the weakened troll. Glancing at the hollowed shafts of the arrows, Chris met the troll's fierce and cruel eyes and couldn't help but chuckle. You've had your day too. With the troll securely restrained, Chris's part in the adventure was over. He stood to earn a reward of 15 gold coins. It was his hard-earned prize. Of course, that's assuming the generous Lord Matthew would honor his promise. The 2 trolls that had fallen into the pit traps hadn't caused much of a ruckus under the adventurers' watchful eyes and were quickly tied up as well. The adventurers weren't careless. Instead of loading the trolls into cages, they used makeshift carts to transport them away. On the way in, everyone had been tense, wary of the trolls' reputation and lethality. But now, with their mission a success, a new thought crossed their minds. If each troll was worth 50 gold coins, they had better keep going. Looking back at what had just happened, Chris realized that aside from him playing the risky decoy, the rest of the adventure was even easier than their usual training. How could this not stir up excitement among the others? Chris had also noticed the shift in atmosphere, but it didn't concern him. He patted the swiftness potion in his pocket, worth 10 gold coins, and exhaled in relief. Alice, however, thought further ahead. She sent scouts to keep watch for any other trolls, and chose a different exit from the gloomy forest, avoiding the cobbled mines and logging camp. Interestingly, instead of encountering Bay Village soldiers or patrols, Alice and her group ran into adventurers scouting for information. Some of them were gathering materials at resource points, others tracking kobolds or searching for signs of trolls. Seeing Alice's haul, they kept their distance, not wanting to cause any misunderstandings. Most hurried towards Bay Village instead. It was clear they wanted to share the news, and were eager to see if Lord Matthew would fulfill his promise. Many of the settlers saw their return and began to speculate with interest. The adventurers gathered, seemingly gearing up for something big, but when the time came, everyone was left dumbfounded. As soon as Alice's team delivered the trolls to the village, staff from the Adventurers Guild appeared, casually paying out the 150 gold coin bounty in full view of the other adventurers. As Alice held the heavy purse, the sound of clinking gold drew everyone's eyes. Was it really that simple? It was truly that simple. Even Alice, who had initiated it all, was taken aback by the eager stares from the crowd. Hurriedly, she began distributing the gold according to their agreement, counting out shares in front of everyone. Wealth can move hearts, and gold dazzles the eyes. The adventurers were buzzing with excitement. Each troll really did fetch 50 gold coins. How could they not be tempted? How could this not drive them mad? Normally, beginner-level missions might pay 3 to 4 gold coins at most, while mid-level missions rarely exceeded 30 gold coins. Yet everyone had witnessed Alice's group capture 3 trolls and walk away with 150 gold coins in just one morning, without a single injury. Wasn't this like picking up free money? The adventurers crowded around, trying to ingratiate themselves with Alice and her team. Everyone wanted in on the action. Alice, who had anticipated this reaction, exchanged a glance with Chris before speaking up in a cheerful tone. Catching trolls is simple. You can ask directly at the Adventurers Guild for tips. All the tools you'll need can be bought there as well. With that, Alice made her way towards the Adventurers Guild. Inside, the well-prepared sales staff had already stocked up on all the necessary supplies. They were just waiting for customers to come rushing in. Chapter 73, The Treasure of the Gloomy Forest. Chapter 73, The Treasure of the Gloomy Forest. The Adventurers Guild bustled with noise as piles of various tools were quickly snatched up. The sales staff couldn't stop smiling. The more they sold, the higher their bonuses would be. Many adventurers, their eyes gleaming with the promise of gold, left the guild after acquiring instructions and purchasing various tools for around 5 gold coins, rushing headlong into the gloomy forest. Steward Ralph watched the adventurers' slightly crazed behavior and shook his head helplessly. Do they really think capturing trolls is that easy? With a nonchalant grunt, Old Village Chief Field looked at a few grouped adventurer parties, shrugged, and said, "There are always fools who like to act recklessly. Stopping them is pointless. After all, Lord Matthew's goal is just to attract more adventurers here." Ralph and Field both knew that driven by greed for gold, many crazed adventurers would inevitably fall in the dangerous gloomy forest, dying at the hands of the powerful trolls. Not every adventurer team had a clear understanding of their own strength. Even stopping them would often be futile. In the Lord's manor, Matthew inspected the 3 newly captured trolls and said to old John, who was standing guard outside, "Feed these trolls well first, then we'll deal with them in a few days." Ignorant of their fate, the trolls struggled wildly. They tried to twist and break free of their restraints. But old John pushed them into the pitch-black dungeon, grumbling as he did, "7 trolls, is that not enough yet? Can Lord Matthew really handle all this on his own?" The trolls couldn't understand John's mutterings, but after sniffing the familiar scent of their kin, they struggled even harder. However, their pitiful howls received no response. The 4 trolls already locked in the dungeon merely glanced up briefly before returning to their silent state. The newly arrived trolls were puzzled by their silence, but before they could react, their limbs were bound by thick iron chains, while the ropes binding them were released. After some thought, old John called over Silverfang, who was engrossed in studying a spell scroll, and said, "Mark down 3 more trolls. Be sure to prepare plenty of food for them. In 3 days they'll be put to use." Nodding obediently, Silverfang deftly picked up a quill and noted the number of trolls. Then he barked a few orders to a group of sturdy kobolds, who rushed off to the storage area to prepare. Clank, clank. The bound trolls continued to struggle. Their strength, however, couldn't budge the thick chains wrapped around their wrists. Their sharp, toothy maws snapped at the air, futilely trying to bite through their chained limbs. Clack, clack, clack. Their teeth bit into nothing but air. The trolls finally realized that their heads and necks were firmly confined within a restricted range. They could only eat the food delivered to their mouths and couldn't even move normally. Naturally, the trolls felt furious, but after struggling for a long time, they couldn't break the thick, sturdy chains. After some time had passed, they stopped their resistance, resigned to their fate, and began looking around at the other silent trolls. To the surprise of the newcomers, the trolls that had been imprisoned earlier hadn't been subjected to any overt cruelty. Their bodies were quite strong, indicating they had been well fed for some time, but their eyes held a certain melancholy. Eventually, one of the curious trolls asked, "Where are we? What will happen to us? Why are you four so quiet? Did you lose your tongues permanently? Why aren't you speaking? Tell us, why haven't the humans killed us?" They rattled off questions one after another, but the veteran trolls gave no response, silently staring at the books before them. Books and wait, since when do trolls read? Have they gone mad? Or have we? The newly arrived trolls were utterly confused, but just then, more than a dozen kobolds scurried out. Each held a bucket, and the sharp-eyed trolls noticed that the buckets were filled with wriggling fish, deepening their confusion. Then the trolls' cages were slowly raised, and the kobolds poured the mass of live fish into a funnel in front of the cage. To the three trolls' astonishment, the wriggling fish slid down a chute, landing directly in front of their mouths. "These fish are for us to eat. The food's being delivered directly to our mouths. Is this a good thing, or is it some kind of torture?" At first, the trolls hesitated, but their intense hunger, combined with the fresh, fishy smell of the live fish, was irresistible. What's there to fear? If they were going to die anyway, they might as well have a good meal first. After a brief moment of hesitation, the three trolls opened their mouths, waiting for the wriggling fish to slide in as they eagerly devoured the meal. In just a short time, they began to feel quite satisfied. Having food brought directly to them made the three trolls feel incredibly fortunate. Not even as infants had they received such treatment. Back then, they had to fight with other troll pups just to avoid starvation. After all, their powerful regenerative abilities came at the cost of becoming insatiable gluttons. Seeing how happily the newcomers ate, the silent trolls exchanged glances, each recognizing a hint of pity in the other's eyes. The group of trolls in the cages began to converse fluently in their oddly accented common tongue. "These poor guys probably think this place is heaven. In a few days they'll realize the price of being well-fed is steep indeed. Forget about them, let's get back to reading. By the way, how do you read this word? Just jot it down for now, we'll ask later." "All right," the trolls exchanged grumbles. Meanwhile, Silverfang watched silently, a hint of surprise in his eyes as he recorded their reactions. What intrigued Silverfang was that Lord Matthew had tasked him with teaching the trolls common language and literacy. He had initially thought this would be a difficult task, perhaps a test from Lord Matthew. To his surprise, the first four trolls had shown a great deal of enthusiasm and interest in learning the common tongue and reading. Silverfang didn't overthink it, nor did he try to guess Lord Matthew's motives. He simply found it fascinating to witness such a change in the trolls, which reminded him of the kobolds. Lord Matthew, who had just received the latest update, was preparing new educational materials to teach the children with the potential to become spellcasters. He wasn't surprised by the trolls' progress. After all, Bay Village was well prepared for anything. All that was needed now was time for everything to settle. As for teaching the trolls the common tongue, it was just one of Matthew's bold and intriguing experiments. In the past, some players had managed to tame and reform certain species, even creating a famous gnoll army. That player's bold actions led to him being hunted down and obliterated by the major powers. Matthew wanted to try his hand at something similar. The risk was small, and if it worked, the rewards would be immense. After all, Matthew was curious to see if trolls, with their decent intelligence, could be tamed. If he was lucky enough, he might even see the day when trolls brewed healing potions on their own. Chapter 74. A Bustling Bay Village. Chapter 74. A Bustling Bay Village. Bay Village. The Academy for Professional Training. Though it was called an academy, it was more accurately just a large enclosed yard. Over 10 spacious warehouses had been converted into classrooms for teaching. The academy was roughly divided into a preschool training class, a physical exercise class, and a skills training class, what Matthew referred to as the small, medium, and large classes. In Matthew's vision, training individuals to become professionals was only the first step. Making them stronger was the core mission of this academy. But that was a distant goal. For now, all Matthew needed to do was provide a space where these children could learn to read and grow. This wasn't without precedent. Many lords before him had initiated similar educational efforts. While most previous lords focused on training spellcasters, Matthew's scope was simply broader. His efforts would likely be seen as generous by many. After all, the majority of the professionals trained here would be obligated to work for him for 20 years. Even so, working for such a generous lord and securing an unshakable iron rice bowl remained the greatest wish of every child and their family. Matthew, who had once envied the stability of an iron rice bowl, acknowledged its limitations and flaws, but the advantages outweighed them and greatly increased his control. The more generous he was, the faster his territory would develop. The more professionals there were, the stronger he became, which in turn justified even greater generosity. It was a win-win, with Matthew winning at least twice. Why wouldn't he embrace it? Steward Ralph quietly stood behind Matthew, reflecting on the grand troll bounty strategy that had taken over half a month to set up, deeply impressed by the lord's foresight. Hearing the sound of training nearby, Ralph grew curious and, after some hesitation, asked, why not let older professionals handle the teaching? After all, they must have a lot of experience. Pausing from his riding, Matthew looked outside at the uniform training, as orderly as workers on an assembly line, and chuckled as memories of his past came to mind. Young people are more moldable and obedient as long as they follow orders. Of course. The premise of all this is to genuinely provide them with a bright future. Aside from meeting specific task goals, a pass rate of over 70%, and a bonus of 50 gold coins for every additional professional trained, it's quite worth it. Ralph, already familiar with his lord's method of using money as a motivator, was nonetheless always intrigued by the objectives and approaches Matthew chose each time. Ralph could imagine it, with honor and the prestige of respect as a lure, and extremely generous rewards as support. These young professionals with potential but low starting points would surely work tirelessly to train the children well. As for Matthew's mention of ideological construction, Ralph considered it somewhat unnecessary. A rare and extraordinary lord like you is bound to be loved by all your people. Isn't loyalty already a given? Naturally, Matthew didn't explain this point to Ralph. Changing deeply ingrained beliefs wasn't something that could be achieved in a few words. Instead, Matthew was planning the next steps for the troll bounty, figuring out how to maximize its impact. March 16th, light rain. Ralph and Old Village Chieffield scolded some villagers trying to head out for work, putting a stop to their crazy ideas. Catching colds and fevers was no joke. It would end up costing them more than they gained. After days of hard work, everyone finally relaxed, and to their surprise, noticed something new. The transformation was not just limited to the wilderness beyond the village, nor to the tall factories being built. The buildings inside the village had undergone significant changes too. Paved stone roads now lined both sides of the village, with drainage ditches carrying waste away, ensuring the roads wouldn't turn to muddy swamps after rain. Rows of 20 to 30 newly built wooden houses lined the streets. Extended eaves along the street offered covered walkways, allowing people to walk through the village even in the rain. Each house served as a shop, selling various goods. From brand new furniture and chairs to everyday household items like needles and bowls, everything was for sale in these shops. And at Matthew's direction, most of the goods were sold at relatively low prices, maintaining a modest profit without needing to subsidize anything. Matthew hadn't opted for more advanced production methods, simply because Bay Village's market was too small to handle such immense pressure. The people of Bay Village, now earning money and free from the fear of hunger, generously purchased furniture for their homes and clothing for their families. The entire village became bustling with activity. In just over half a month, under the leadership of their lord, Bay Village had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. Life had changed from hunger to one where no one worried about their next meal. Only now did everyone realize how much their lord had done for them, without them even noticing. And all they had to do was follow the lord's orders, put in the same effort they always had, and reap completely different results. How could they not be excited? Not only were the streets bustling, but the taverns along the roads were packed with business. Adventurers, flush with success, were celebrating gleefully, throwing around gold coins and indulging in food and drink. If there was one regret, it was that Bay Village didn't offer any women for entertainment. A territory that didn't deal in that kind of business was baffling to many adventurers. But since the lord of the land was an arcanist, and a particularly generous one at that, most put aside this minor disappointment. In just 2 days, the adventurers had captured a total of 20 trolls, losing only 2 people, and earned over 1,000 gold coins in bounties. Every adventurer walked away with at least 2 or 3 gold coins, the equivalent of a month or 2 of hard-earned income, often with much greater risks. How could they not be thrilled? If it weren't for the rain today, the remaining isolated trolls would have been captured too, leaving only those in the deeper, more dangerous parts of the forest. Even so, the adventurers, led by Alice and other team captains, were already planning how to capture more trolls deeper in the gloomy forest. Such a golden opportunity, how could they let it slip by? Ever since the Empire abandoned expansion in the northeast, Bay Village hasn't seen such activity in a long time. Standing on the wall, old village chief Fields smiled as he watched the scene before him. Steward Ralph, brimming with confidence, imagined the grandeur of Senna City and, gazing at the approaching convoy in the distance, smiled and said, "It'll only get livelier here. Let's go welcome Adam Smith. This tireless merchant has brought us more good things." In the misty rain, a caravan, larger than before, slowly approached Bay Village. Chapter 75, Barbarian Slaves. Chapter 75, Barbarian Slaves. The light rain gradually stopped. The ground became more level. Returning to Bay Village once again, Adam Smith felt anxious, far from the ambitious state of mind he had when he left. His personal guard, Captain Marin, noticed his boss's furrowed brow and chuckled mischievously. Is it really worth worrying about? The Lord of Bay Village shouldn't care too much about their numbers, right? Adam Smith shot him a glare and rubbed his tense face before trying to force a smile, replying helplessly, "Don't you understand by now? When working for the Lord, completing tasks is mandatory, and extra contributions are rewarded, but if you cause trouble, then..." Leon, who was leading the way, overheard their conversation, either intentionally or unintentionally. His eyes scanned the tall, strong figures in the group. Barbarians. More precisely, they were barbarian slaves. Each of these barbarians was tall and robust, and even though they hadn't eaten well in recent days, they still exuded a fierce energy. According to Adam Smith, the number of professionals willing to settle in Bay Village had sharply declined, and recruiting talent for manufacturing had been disappointing. To make up for this, he had bought a large batch of barbarian slaves, mainly for a master-level barbarian expert. This barbarian master was willing to work for the Lord, but only on the condition that he could bring 1,000 barbarians with him, including 800 elderly, women, and children. The barbarian slaves themselves weren't much trouble. But the 800 who couldn't produce any value and would only be a burden, that was a problem. Moreover, Leon clearly remembered that most barbarian slaves had a knack for stirring up trouble, and always managed to cause issues. Over time, very few territories were willing to accept barbarian slaves. However, barbarian professionals often ventured into human lands as adventurers and were quite popular as teammates in adventuring parties. As team members, barbarians were appreciated for their straightforwardness, bravery in battle, and willingness to sacrifice themselves. They were excellent companions. But this 1,000-strong group of barbarians might not be accepted by the Lord, which could damage the Lord's opinion of Adam Smith and his ability to get things done. That was what worried Adam Smith. The barbarians seemed to understand this as well, remaining silent along the way. Regardless of age or gender, they tried to appear harmless and made sure to eat as much as they could during meals. After all, they might soon have to fend for themselves. The gradually smoother roads weighed heavily on Adam Smith's mind. The Lord's pace of development had never slowed, which meant that if he failed to keep up, he might be discarded. How could Adam Smith feel at ease under such pressure? Just as Adam Smith's worries deepened, a large group of kobolds came rushing over. Everyone stared in shock as the kobolds spread out and dumped small stones along the roadside. These kobolds even used tools, expertly leveling the road's surface as they worked. Even the barbarian slaves, watching the kobolds scurrying about, couldn't help but feel confused. The wagon drivers, who had heard rumors, gazed in amazement at the scene before them. This spectacle increased their confidence in the treatment Adam Smith had promised. Meanwhile, the large gathering of adventurers couldn't resist starting a conversation. "I wonder if the rumors are true. Can a single troll really fetch 50 gold coins? Probably not anywhere else but here. It seems plausible. I've already heard from the Adventurers Guild. It's definitely true. I even heard they plan to set up a branch here. I can believe the first part, but a new guild branch. That's probably a rumor. Haha, whether there's a branch or not doesn't matter. As long as the bounties are high enough, 50 gold coins for one troll, that's a reward unlike any other. Has anyone thought about bringing trolls in from elsewhere? Haha, nice idea. But the Lord isn't a fool. One simple truth spell would reveal that kind of trick. So don't get any funny ideas. I heard the Lord has a dragon. That's definitely true. It's already the talk of Blood Moon City. Some spellcasters say it's probably a drake. It's still a dragon. And way stronger than any ordinary lesser dragon. With various thoughts in mind, everyone arrived at the gates of Bay Village. The well-ordered ranks of soldiers, just like before, awaited their arrival. This time, the number of formations had increased to 5. Over 200 soldiers stood in a powerful display, giving everyone who arrived a stern welcome. Reflecting on the lands being cultivated along the way, Adam Smith finally understood why the Lord was always recruiting more people. At the same time, he realized that the situation he was about to face might be even more difficult than he had anticipated. Among the barbarian slaves, a wagon slowly came to a halt. Inside, an old barbarian shaman stared deeply at the towering walls, her wrinkled face showing a trace of sadness. A tall, rugged barbarian approached, bowing his head in respect, his face tinged with shame. His massive, powerful frame bore rough tattoos of a large, tusked mouth. His calloused hands lifted to help the elderly shaman dismount the wagon. "We survived that terrible battlefield. We won't give up so easily. Let's see what happens." His words only deepened the barbarian's guilt. He glanced nervously at the soldiers, his eyes showing both restraint and unease, as if he were facing formidable opponents. The other barbarian slaves also gathered closer, led by the tall barbarian and the shaman, as they slowly approached the gate. The rest of the caravan crew turned their heads, curious about what the barbarian slaves intended to do. Yet the soldiers in formation showed no reaction, as if they hadn't noticed the barbarians approaching. Old John narrowed his eyes slightly, while nearby, Golden Fang's muscles tensed. Both sensed a faint pressure from the tall barbarian approaching slowly. However, Ralph remained calm and turned to the hurried Adam Smith, asking, "Is this the master-level expert, MS?" Tana, as he asked, Ralph turned to face the elderly barbarian shaman. He smiled serenely, showing no hint of prejudice despite her being a barbarian. The unusual display left the old shaman hesitant. Before she could respond, Adam Smith quickly nodded and answered, "Yes, this is MS. Tana, the master I invited. She's an expert breeder, skilled in raising advanced warhorses, camel beasts, and Komodo beasts." Before the shaman could reply, Ralph gestured politely. Bay Village welcomed all talent with open arms. Announcement: a big thank you to Blake Weltner for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 76, You're Nothing Special. Chapter 76, You're Nothing Special. The barbarian Beelzebub ultimately remained in place. It wasn't just because of the disciplined soldiers, but because the elder shaman Tana had told him before they came. Unless faced with a deadly threat, he must hold back. Before he could react, the soldiers at the gate had already begun organizing everyone into lines. "If you could help us with the records, we need to register each person," said old John with a smile, eyeing the towering barbarian before gesturing toward the queue. Beelzebub hesitated, staring at old John. What surprised him was that there was no familiar hostility, only a hint of delight. It was all too strange. Old John, ever the familiar presence, pointed to the line of cart drivers and adventurers, explaining as if it were only natural, "Do you see them? Whether they're cart drivers, wanderers, adventurers, or even former kobolds, they won't face unexpected danger as long as they follow the rules of the territory." Beelzebub observed the soldiers, noting that unlike those he'd encountered before, they weren't trying to exploit people under the guise of searches or inspections. Every person, including adventurers, had their weapons collected and were handed a slip of paper. Weapons are registered and stored with the corresponding numbered tag. When you leave the village, you'll get your weapon back. This is to ensure no violent incidents occur within the village. The strict weapon control measures went far beyond Beelzebub's imagination. Even the typically arrogant adventurers, as if they'd been informed beforehand, obediently handed over their weapons without a hint of defiance. It was all so peculiar. Although Beelzebub found the situation strange, he began to relax. Despite Bay Village's oddities, at least there didn't seem to be any immediate danger. With his expectations set low, Beelzebub wasn't asking for much. While everyone lined up to enter the village, the anxious Adam Smith made his way into the Lord's estate, which looked the same as before, entirely unchanged from Bay Village. Behind him, the elder shaman Tana, her face filled with complex emotions, stared at Yaya, who descended from the sky, whispering in disbelief. A dragon. Yaya landed precisely on Matthew's shoulder. She stretched lazily, revealing her graceful form and increasingly radiant silver body. Though small, her wings and claws were sharp and fully developed. Shaman Tana gazed at this near-perfect creature, and terrifying images flashed through her mind as she lowered her head slightly. Stroking Yaya's smooth back, Matthew scanned Shaman Tana's stats, smiling slightly as he said, "It seems your battle with the Eastern Empire was quite intense." His words left everyone else confused, not understanding what Matthew meant. Only Shaman Tana looked at Matthew's dark eyes in shock, asking fearfully, "How do you know?" Name, Tana. Age, 112. Class, Level 12 High Shaman, Master Breeder. Status, Chief Shaman of the Harek clan on the Eastern Continent. Talent, Skills, Heritage, Attributes. Although Matthew hadn't fully uncovered her power, he had gathered enough information. With a mysterious smile, Matthew avoided answering directly, choosing instead to display his background and strength. In a gentle tone, he said, "Since you know the common language, that makes things easier. We've purchased you and your people, and you only need to work for me for 5 years. During those 5 years, you'll receive fair wages, plenty of food, and proper conditions. After 5 years, you can leave freely, but you'll have to give up everything here, and rejoining later would mean starting from scratch. Of course, if you don't agree to these terms, you can simply owe me 1,000 gold coins and work it off before leaving." Shaman Tana, who had dealt with countless people, suddenly found Matthew impossible to read. The terms were incredibly generous, but that only deepened her suspicion. However, as Matthew had pointed out, she seemed powerless to resist. After the Hadak clan suffered devastating losses in battle against the terrifying forces of the Eastern Empire, nearly losing all their able-bodied fighters, their fate had been sealed. Seeing her spirit so broken, Matthew couldn't help but think that this once background-only conflict might be far more complex than he had imagined. He continued calmly, "There's nothing special about you. Don't worry if you want to stay longer in Bay Village, you should learn the common language properly." Before he could finish speaking, Matthew turned and left. Only then did Golden Fang and Silver Fang finally take their fierce gazes off the old shaman's vital points. She stood there, stunned. Back at the Lord's estate, Ralph took the supply list from Adam Smith, quickly noticing a change in the figures. 2 million pounds of wheat, total cost 100 gold coins, with the price per pound rising by 1 copper coin. 3,000 pounds of spell components, total cost 360 gold coins, with the price per pound rising by 2 silver coins. Ralph promptly informed Matthew of the change, and Matthew quickly identified the issue. These seemingly minor shifts are actually quite significant within the Netheral Empire. The former represents the foundation of livelihood, and the latter indicates fluctuations among spellcasters. Have the prices of production materials dropped? If it were only 1 or 2 items, Matthew wouldn't have thought much of it. But when nearly all material prices fluctuated, combined with his memories, he quickly noticed something was amiss. It seems that with the limited scope I used to have, I missed noticing the subtle causes of these changes. Now it's clear some factions have already begun making preparations. After all, divination magic isn't rare. Perhaps they only saw fragments, but the changes are real. Many thoughts flashed through Matthew's mind before he set them aside to focus on the present. Bay Village had already stored up 4 million pounds of wheat, enough to feed 22,000 people for a year. Nearly 5,000 pounds of spell materials had been stockpiled, sufficient for him and the trainees for a long time. For now, these supplies weren't an immediate concern. However, in Matthew's plans, Bay Village was destined for continuous expansion, recruiting new people almost every week. With 6 months until the heavy snows of winter, and a steady recruitment pace of around 500 people per month. By the time winter approached, Bay Village's population could reach as high as 35,000. Not to mention the terrifying orc wave of destruction that was expected next year. What they had now was far from enough. Chapter 77, Time Waits for No One. Chapter 77, Time Waits for No One. We must stockpile enough food and crossbows. We can't produce them for now. Magic materials can begin production. But we're still far from achieving scale. Common weapons and equipment will be the next production target. We should start preparing to find markets for them. Having made up his mind, Matthew glanced at the seemingly balanced accounts, and rather than getting into lengthy discussions with the eager Adam Smith, gave him an approving nod and said, "You did well this time. As for other daily necessities, we can pause those acquisitions for now. Focus all your efforts on purchasing as much food and magic materials as possible. Keep buying heavy crossbows as well." Though surprised by the Lord's continued large-scale efforts, Adam Smith immediately began speculating about the hidden significance behind them. Could it be the rising costs of food and magical materials? The quick-thinking Adam Smith felt a chill, but also a wave of delight. He was certain Matthew's judgment was spot on, or that he had access to insider information from hidden channels. For a merchant, information is as valuable as gold. Having already invested part of his own fortune, Adam Smith now felt confident this deal was turning into a great profit. Looking into the Lord's deep, dark eyes, he shivered slightly. "Is this my reward from the Lord? It must be, there's no doubt. It seems the Lord is perhaps pushing me to the forefront, making me a pawn or bait." Adam Smith wasn't bothered by this thought. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity. This could be a test from the Lord. "I'll definitely wade into these murky waters." Before Adam Smith could finish his thoughts, he heard Matthew continue with his next set of tasks. "Also, don't stop the recruitment efforts or acquiring supplies. The territory is in desperate need of people. Do your best to recruit a few druids for me as well." Everything else seemed fine, but this request for druids gave Adam Smith a headache. After considering it for a moment, he gritted his teeth and nodded, saying, "Recruitment is currently on track. I've secured multiple channels to steadily gather civilians and refugees from the south. were bringing in about 2,000 people each week. However, druids tend to stick together, making them hard to find and even harder to recruit, seeing that Adam Smith hadn't raised any unusual concerns. Matthew chuckled quietly and said calmly, "Don't worry, you've proven your capability. If you find the druids, great. If not, it's no big deal. From now on, you'll receive 5,000 bottles of blood-replenishing potions every week. As for your fixed procurement targets, 2 million pounds of wheat and 10 heavy crossbows, that will be deducted from the sales of tea. He's potions. You must spend all of these 500 gold coins as efficiently as possible." Hearing that there would be 5,000 bottles of potions available each week, Adam Smith's eyes gleamed with excitement as he quickly took notes and eagerly nodded. To him, with the backing of the Sir family, the sale of this many potions each week was just the tip of the iceberg. The thousands of adventurers in Blood Moon City represented a vast market, and this seemed to be just a test run from the Lord beside them. Ralph couldn't hide his surprise. He knew very well that all the potions could only have been brewed by the Lord himself, but could the Lord truly handle producing nearly 1,000 potions a day? And releasing such a large quantity, wouldn't this attract the attention of other forces? The Lord's urgency mirrored his aggressive development of Bay Village. For an arcane lord, this behavior seemed strange indeed. This went beyond mere kindness. If Ralph knew Matthew's true thoughts, he would surely be even more amazed, and Matthew would likely add even more responsibility to Ralph's plate. When people have too much time on their hands, they tend to overthink things. Looking at the eager Adam Smith and the new tasks Matthew had for him, he waved him over and said, "Don't rush off just yet. Bay Village's development has stabilized for now. Take some time to observe its changes, identify its weaknesses and shortcomings for me. That way you'll know what else to acquire next. When you have a competent tool, why not use it?" Matthew was never the type to micromanage. Let professionals handle professional matters. It promotes growth and helps them keep up with his pace of development. Adam Smith took this as a sign of trust from the Lord and felt elated. To him, this meant Matthew was signaling a closer relationship. Thrilled, Adam Smith eagerly agreed, patting his chest and promising, "I'll take a close look and return with the necessary goods and resources as soon as possible." Seeing his excitement, Matthew didn't bother explaining further. Let the clever merchant figure it out on his own. He might feel more invested that way. Half an hour later, smiling from ear to ear, Adam Smith accompanied Ralph out of the Lord's estate. The motivated merchant marveled at Bay Village's transformation, saying in awe, "In such a short time, Bay Village has become even more prosperous than a small town." As he spoke, Adam Smith entered a shop. The faint smell of fish didn't bother him. Instead, he examined the various types of fish on display. There were not only salted fish, but also fresh fish swimming lively in tanks. Centuries ago, after Eastern culinary methods spread, people had grown fond of fish. After all, it was a rare source of meat. At Ralph's signal, Oldfield, the village chief, approached with a hint of resignation and explained, "Both the spacious Silvermoon River and the coast nearly 100 kilometers away provide us with plentiful fish. But sadly, the number of fishermen there is overwhelming, so we can only fish on a small scale." Adam Smith, knowing Oldfield's position, examined the goods more closely. The selection included sardines, yellowtail, and red snapper among the smaller fish. Cod, grouper, and tuna were among the larger varieties. Even just establishing 2 piers along the river or opening a road to the coastline could bring in a significant amount of fish. And it would be a year-round business. Adam Smith also understood that, like other regions developing their fisheries, countless fishmen and various dangerous aquatic creatures would greatly increase costs and challenges. Oldfield seemed to realize this as well and quietly introduced Adam Smith to the local ways of preparing fish. After a while, Oldfield led him to another shop. This one displayed a variety of clothing, all made from sturdy linen with decent designs. Several recruited tailors, each with 2 apprentices, were busily working inside the shop. Scratching his nose, Adam Smith now began to understand. Chapter 78, Golem Creation. Chapter 78, Golem Creation. Ding, congratulations, you've learned a first circle spell, create minor golem. With this, all the skills have been learned. Matthew set aside the spell scroll Adam Smith had brought and rubbed his temples, his gaze filled with thought, in the original memories. The previous incarnation had almost learned all zeroth and first circle spells available, and he had trained the most practical ones up to level 3 and even level 4. Could it be something missing due to death? Or is there something else? Matthew's pondering only lasted a moment before he redirected his attention to the most important task at hand. Creating a golem. The spell scrolls Adam Smith brought were crucial to this task. The process of creating a golem wasn't simple. In fact, it was quite complex. But in order to relieve himself from the burdensome task of brewing ever-increasing amounts of blood-replenishing potions, Matthew was willing to spend the necessary money. Moreover, the ability to create golems was also a vital part of his future plans. For an arcane mage, golems of all kinds served not only as assistants in life and experiments, but also as warriors in battle and guardians of the home. Any capable arcane mage wouldn't hesitate to create some golems to aid them, and even those without the talent or inclination for it didn't mind purchasing a few. For Matthew, this was another potential source of income, though its benefits would be slow to materialize. His first goal was to create the simplest type, a clay golem. The first step was preparing 500 pounds of impurity-free clay. Matthew used a flamethrower to thoroughly dry the clay. Then he crushed it into fine powder. During this process, Matthew sprinkled in 2 shards of magical white crystal. Under the light, the pale yellow dust sparkled with glimmers of light. Mixing the crystal shards and dust completely, Matthew prepared a batch of purified water and slowly poured it in. Using a large glass rod controlled by mage hand, he stirred the mixture evenly. He continued until all the dirt had become a thick slurry. Matthew then added some mithril powder, an expensive metal that could sell for 1 gold coin per gram. The market rarely sold it. Adam Smith had obtained 50 grams through alternative channels at considerable cost. The large glass rod kept stirring, while a flame below began to dry the slurry gradually. Before it fully hardened, Matthew placed the mixture into a wooden mold. At the center of the mold was a 20 gold coin, worth earth elemental crystal. This would serve as the golem's energy core. This method was simpler than traditional golem crafting and could save a lot of effort in shaping the body. However, it also created a bigger problem. The creator's mana consumption and skill control requirements were much higher. So when Matthew cast the spell to create the minor golem, tendrils of mana slowly seeped into the hardening golem puppet. A faint pop sound came from the wooden mold. It signified that materials worth over 50 gold coins had just been ruined. Matthew wasn't surprised by the failure. He had only been testing to see how far he could get with the knowledge and experience from his memories. Reflecting on the failure, Matthew pondered over the critical issues in clay golem creation. The body of a clay golem is like a machine. The energy core acts as both the power source and engine, mana nodes are like the wiring and control circuits, and the spell matrix functions as the core processor. Understanding the golem's workings allowed Matthew to grasp the steps needed moving forward. This was only part of his learning. Deng, clay golem creation failed. Gained clay golem information, magic item creation experience +1, currently at 56. Normally, crafting golems took a tremendous amount of time and effort. Learning and practicing the process was long and expensive. It was akin to building costly robots. If you failed, you lost everything. No wonder his previous self hadn't raised this ability to a higher level. Ding spent 2 skill points to raise create minor golem to level 2. With 7 skill points remaining, Matthew eyed the 40 grams of mithril he had left. Ding spent 3 skill points to raise create minor golem to level 3. 4 skill points remained. Ding, create minor golem raised to level 4. Create minor golem level 4. 40% increased success rate for minor golem creation. 20% improved golem attributes, 5% chance to produce a mutated golem. After the level up, the enhanced spell effects satisfied Matthew. He carefully reviewed the new knowledge in his mind before diving back into the crafting process. The second clay golem creation began. The material preparation didn't see much operational improvement, but Matthew had a clearer idea of how to allocate the materials. Then came the stages of mana infusion, spell matrix construction, and spell casting. One by one, the mana nodes formed under Matthew's precise mental control. And once again, the attempt failed. Watching the dust scatter from the explosion, Matthew decided to let the kobolds have these scraps as an extra snack. Reflecting on the failure, he mentally reviewed the critical moments when the spell matrix collapsed and simulated the entire process. Rolling up his sleeves, he resumed. The third attempt began. This time, the process flowed more smoothly. The spell matrix construction, under Matthew's precise control, was completed successfully. At this stage, the creation was 70% complete. But then, the slightly glowing core suddenly burst, scattering the dry clay in all directions. The flying chunks of dirt rippled through the air before crumbling into powder on the floor. Another failure. A fully clear mana conduit matrix appeared in Matthew's mind, and he quickly pinpointed the cause. A misalignment in the mana node caused instability in the mana flow, and without an excess buffer, the nodes exploded. Identifying the problem, Matthew began mentally rehearsing the next attempt. He soon started his fourth attempt. Faint mana glows filled the laboratory once more. Time passed minute by minute. As his staff pulled away from the clay golem, ripples of mana energy emanated from the golem's form. The shape slowly began to change, as though some internal program was automatically adjusting its structure. Matthew suddenly realized that the spell matrix for Create Minor Golem likely had built-in procedural codes, hidden deep within the spell. Ding successfully created Clay Golem, Magic Item Creation Experience +5, currently at 61. Clenching his fist, Matthew excitedly watched the Clay Golem stand up. Success. Chapter 79, The Power of Vitalization. Chapter 79, The Power of Vitalization. The completion of the first Clay Golem symbolized that Matthew now possessed the initial ability to create golems. Where there's one, there will be more. The Clay Golem succeeded, so the Stone Golem can't be far off. Steel Golems and Diamond Golems are calling out to me. Feeling quite pleased, Matthew murmured softly as he examined the Clay Golem he had personally created, nodding in satisfaction. The finished Clay Golem weighed 500 kilograms and stood nearly 2 meters tall. It was grey-brown and relatively smooth. With a broad chest, thick arms, and no neck, its roughly sculpted facial features gave it a rugged look. Its facial features were merely decorative. The golem relied on detection magic to assess its surroundings. Its limbs were thick, and its joints faintly glimmered with magical energy. Its towering frame resembled the classic image of a big bodyguard that Matthew had imagined. The entire body looked like an oversized clay toy. But its stats told Matthew that this was a golem capable of killing. Clay Golem type, basic construct, max HP +10, height, 2 meters weight, 500 pounds challenge rating, 4+ abilities, mental immunity specialties, none installed skills, grapple LV1, heavy blow LV1, physical resistance LV1, construct trait physical defense +2. Attributes: strength, 18 dexterity, 10 constitution, 14 perception, 10 intelligence, 2 standby time, 20 days active duration, 48 hours combat mode, 2 hours charisma, 0 luck, 0 attack power, 4 defense, 4 HP, 28 +10/38. Evaluation: a rigid meat shield. Despite the lack of special features, Matthew was quite satisfied with the Clay Golem. Its strength of 18 alone was enough to fulfill many of his plans. As for combat, Matthew never intended to rely on the Clay Golem for fighting. It wasn't worth the cost. Training sustainable warriors was far more economical than constantly replenishing a Clay Golem's mana and energy. With the first Clay Golem completed, Matthew was ready to start the second phase. Licking his lips slightly, Matthew turned his attention to the second arcane legacy, Vitalization Empowerment. Ding, do you wish to spend 1,000 experience points to use Vitalization Empowerment LV1? One use requires 1,000 experience points. Far from finding the cost excessive, Matthew was even more excited. The more you invest, the more you gain. Raising his staff to the Clay Golem's chest, Matthew began to cast Vitalization Empowerment. Suddenly, Matthew saw the entire structure of the Clay Golem's body in his mind's eye, with its faintly glowing patterns representing mana nodes and the internal magical pathways. As Matthew focused on the golem's overall mana structure, he began to understand the roles of many mana nodes and power routes. This part is for enhancing its reactions. These mana nodes are for balancing and adjusting its posture, and this is the main energy transfer channel. Matthew eagerly analyzed the Clay Golem, absorbing the knowledge and seamlessly integrating the Create Minor Golem knowledge that had recently leveled up. Ding, Magic Item Creation Experience +1, current total, 62. Ding, Magic Item Creation Experience +1, current total, 63. Ding. After fully comprehending the Clay Golem's internal structure, Matthew was surprised to find that his Magic Item Creation Experience had increased by 10 points, now sitting at 71. That was more than he had gained from successfully crafting the Clay Golem itself. Matthew quickly realized that one was merely understanding the result, while the other was understanding the process. Naturally, the knowledge gained was vastly different. The benefits from Vitalization Empowerment hadn't even been revealed yet, but Matthew was already delighted with the bonus. If it worked for Clay Golems, could it also work for other magical items? If that were possible, wouldn't the key mana nodes for various magical items be laid bare before him? These greedy thoughts flashed briefly in his mind, but he quickly refocused on the present task. Creating one Clay Golem had been difficult enough. It would be disastrous to ruin it now. Matthew felt a faint sense that the Clay Golem's abilities could be enhanced further, with the system displaying the improvements quantitatively. Vitalization Empowerment LV1, choose one enhancement option. It seems that as the level of Vitalization Empowerment increases, the number of enhancements will also grow. But I wonder, can the same construct be enhanced repeatedly? As he pondered, Matthew identified 3 possible enhancement directions for the Clay Golem. The first was to enhance its intelligence. In this world, intelligence often determined the amount of mana available. This enhancement would increase its mana capacity, allowing the clay golem to cast more spells, sustain combat longer, and increase the power of its abilities. The second was to enhance its wisdom. Intelligence didn't necessarily equate to wisdom. While the clay golem could be classified as a construct lifeform, it had almost no wisdom. At best, it functioned at the level of a 3- or 4-year-old child, incapable of speech or meaningful interaction, leaving it rather dull. The final option was to enhance its reaction speed. Reaction speed referred to the processing rate of its thoughts. To put it simply, it was like comparing the computing power of a manual calculator to that of a laptop. This would affect how quickly the golem could process situations and commands, as well as its reaction time in combat. As Matthew's first experiment, this clay golem was a standardized tank, robust and powerful in combat. He chose to enhance its intelligence. This would extend its combat duration and slightly increase its combat strength. After all, Matthew didn't have the money or resources to build energy or mana-replenishing elemental cores. Sustaining the clay golem's daily consumption required him to regularly infuse it with mana. Under Matthew's gaze, surges of mana flowed into the clay golem's energy core. Blue magical light transformed along mystical paths, reshaping the golem. Although Matthew didn't fully understand the process, he made sure to memorize it, confident that as his knowledge increased, he'd be able to extract more from it. The entire process lasted about 3 minutes. As the glow gradually faded, the already sturdy clay golem underwent a significant transformation. Its height remained 2 meters, but its chest became even broader and sturdier. Square-shaped armor plates appeared on its grayish-yellow exterior. What thrilled Matthew the most was the change in the golem's stats. Clay golem type, intermediate construct, max HP plus 20, height, 2 meters weight, 500 pounds challenge rating, 6+ abilities, mental immunity specialties, none installed skills, grapple LV2, heavy blow LV2, physical resistance LV2, construct trait physical defense plus 4, magic resistance LV1. Attributes, strength, 18 dexterity, 14 constitution, 15 perception, 12 intelligence, 6 standby time, 60 days active duration, 108 hours combat mode, 6 hours charisma, 0 luck, 0 attack power, 4 defense, 6 HP, 30 plus 20 construct trait /50. Evaluation, a solid tank. Matthew took a deep breath and couldn't help but exclaim, "Vitalization empowerment is truly powerful." Announcement, a big thank you to Esley Gunner and Minion for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 80, Mutated Clay Golem. Chapter 80, Mutated Clay Golem. The basic construct had now evolved into a mid-tier construct. Don't be fooled by just one rank upgrade. The combat strength of the clay golem was now equivalent to 2 of its previous versions. With enhanced defense and HP, clay golem No. 1 had become an even more formidable tank. With it holding the front line, Matthew could cast his spells with much greater ease. What pleased him the most, of course, was the 4-point increase in intelligence. Its endurance had tripled, making it capable of sustaining a full-scale battle. Although Matthew had expended 1,000 experience points, he considered it well worth the cost. After all, with more golems like this joining the soldier formations, both offensive and defensive capabilities would be greatly enhanced. Naturally, his ability to gain experience would also increase significantly. Thinking of the impending giant hunting campaign, a smirk appeared on Matthew's lips. The success of the first clay golem filled him with confidence. Matthew promptly began preparations for the second one. Unlike the initial failed attempts, Matthew felt an increasing mastery over the process. It seemed that his deepening understanding of the internal structure of the clay golem made casting the spell much smoother. After about half an hour, the second clay golem was successfully crafted. Its attributes were identical to the first, yet another clumsy tank. Matthew wasn't disappointed by this. Although the second didn't provide the same level of enhancement as the first, it still contributed 3-4 levels of magical item crafting experience, equivalent to how players burn money to boost their skills through materials. Every Arcane player was well versed in this method. The only problem was that everyone was short on money. Matthew continued creating clay golems over the next period. The blue glow of magic lit up repeatedly, as tall clay figures gradually increased in number. The third golem, the fourth, the fifth. As Matthew began working on the sixth, a peculiar feeling suddenly washed over him, especially when he poured in over 10 points of mana into the spell model. Instead of dissipating, the mana continued to circulate. He immediately realized that something unusual was happening. However, Matthew soon noticed. The system display showed no visible changes. This particular clay golem seemed no different from the others. This shouldn't be the case. Matthew scrutinized the clay golem repeatedly. He wasn't willing to let this anomaly slip away. If the system data was useless, he would resort to his final intervention. Spend 100 fate coins to activate fate's decision. His intuition rarely failed him, and now, with his luck in a stable phase, Matthew decided to take a chance. Ding, fate's decision activated. Option 1, spend 2,000 experience points and 200 fate coins to guide the mutation of the clay golem perfectly, luck -3. Option 2, abandon the mutation guidance, allow it to fail, luck +2. A mutated clay golem. Only a 5% chance of occurring. Matthew's eyes lit up as he quickly analyzed the two choices. Normally, a drop in luck would soon manifest itself, either by encountering enemies or facing challenges. Right now, Matthew needed more opponents to harvest experience points. Upgrading golems and possibly magical equipment in the future would require a vast amount of experience points. And the most enticing part, this mutated clay golem would surely obey Matthew, its creator, making the choice clear. After Matthew chose the first option, his remaining experience points dropped to 11,500, his fate coins to 1,200, and his skill points were now at 0. As he comforted himself, he thought, fate will simply send me more enemies, giving me more opportunities to reap rewards. Just as Matthew pondered this, he noticed the previously dormant system display suddenly flashing back to life. Cast Vitalization Empowerment. Without hesitation, Matthew spent another 1,000 experience points and witnessed an astonishing sight. Brilliant blue light enveloped the mutated clay golem, as a far more complex spell model and mana channels formed within it. Ding, insert Earth Elemental Crystal. Matthew placed another Earth Elemental Crystal onto it. The light yellow crystal was absorbed into the clay, merging with the golem's body. A smaller clay golem, roughly Matthew's size, appeared before him. It had a humanoid appearance and physique, with yellow-tinged eyes, slender hands, and nimble fingers. What astounded Matthew the most was this. After its creation, the mutated clay golem respectfully placed its hand over its chest, bowed to Matthew, and said, "Great Master, thank you for granting me life. I will devote my existence and loyalty to serving you with all my heart." Ding, mutated clay golem successfully created. Magic item crafting level +20, current total, 91 mid-tier. This mutated clay golem's attributes were as follows. Name, unnamed status, servant of Matthew Sir. Type, mid-tier construct / half-elemental lifeform, max HP +20, height, 1, 8 meters weight, 500 pounds challenge rating, 8+ class, sorcerer talents, dexterous hands LV1. Earth elemental absorption LV2, recovers 20 mana per hour while idle, specialties. Fine control LV1 skills, magic resistance LV2, magic defense +4, abilities. Knowledge 56 mid-tier, magic item crafting 50 mid-tier. Alchemy 54 mid-tier, perception 50 mid-tier, spells, cantrips, light LV1, cleanse LV1, mage hand LV2. First level spells, create minor golem LV2, transmute mud to stone LV2. Attributes, strength, 12 dexterity, 10 constitution, 14 perception, 10 intelligence, 14 standby time, 140 days active duration, 14 days combat mode, 14 hours charisma, 16 luck, 0 attack power, 2 magic attack, 2 defense, 2 magic defense, 6 HP, 28 + 20/48. Mana 140 + 10, class level, /150. Evaluation, a curious life form in the process of growing. It can create clay golems on its own. It can brew potions. This is truly a treasure. What's the definition of a pleasant surprise? This was it. As Matthew looked at the unique life form he had personally created, his eyes gleamed with anticipation. Since you've been granted intelligence, you should also have a name. From now on, you will be called Mountain. Hearing this, Mountain's eyes glowed brighter, and in a louder, firmer voice he replied, "Thank you, great master, for naming me. What will my duties be?" Such human-like intelligence and reasoning left Matthew in awe. Was this the outcome of altering fate, a mutated clay golem? Matthew felt an urge to continue experimenting, but decided to hold off for now. His mana reserves were depleted, and he had run out of materials. The crucial earth elemental crystals used in creating clay golems had all been exhausted. Over 500 gold pieces worth of materials had been burned through. Matthew winced at the cost, knowing he needed to make money quickly. Chapter 81, Hands-Free. Chapter 81, Hands-Free. Stir at a steady pace for 4 minutes and 32 seconds. At 5 minutes and 16 seconds, gradually add the moonflower powder. Once stirred, cool for 3 minutes and 7 seconds before adding the red amberlow leaf powder. Under Matthew's guidance, Mountain demonstrated an extraordinary talent for comprehension and execution, following all steps meticulously. After only 4 failed attempts, he successfully brewed the blood-replenishing potion. With a completion rate of 75, the quality was between acceptable and excellent. It was fully fit for sale. Matthew noticed that Mountain's alchemy skill had increased by 2 points. This unique lifeform possessed growth potential. However, Mountain's self-growth ability was limited. Matthew needed to teach, load, and update him regularly. Even so, Matthew was very satisfied with Mountain and handed over all blood-replenishing potion production to him, not minding the occasional failure. At worst, the trolls would just have to give more blood in rotation. Matthew was now freed, relieved from the need to spend time making potions for profit. Watching Mountain busy at work filled him with an odd sense of satisfaction. This was the essence of an arcanist, crafting and utilizing tools. And Mountain was certainly one such tool. With a light step, Matthew set all the clay golems to standby and left the lab. Now Matthew had time to teach his cheap apprentice. After all, even tools should be trained from a young age. Carefully writing down intricate draconic runes, her eyes full of delight, Liana felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Beside her, Yaya slept soundly, causing no disturbance but rather adding a cozy atmosphere. Food. Yaya, don't take it. Liana pursed her lips at Rebecca's sleep-talking. She resisted the urge to look at Rebecca's face, afraid she might burst into laughter. The fatigue of learning had vanished, and Liana happily returned to the ocean of knowledge. She was determined to study hard and become a powerful arcanist. At the workbench, Sulin watched her daughter studying intently, her smile full of satisfaction, carefully stitching fabric. Occasionally, she cast curious glances at the sleeping Yair and Rebecca, feeling a warmth deep inside. This peaceful life filled her with immense contentment. Yair, still in slumber, let out a cute snore, her slender tail raised and gently swaying in the air. Matthew quietly entered, greeting Yair with a thought to keep sleeping, and she obediently continued to snooze. Eating and sleeping to grow stronger, such is the way of dragons. Sulin noticed Matthew and began to stand, but then stopped herself. Smiling at her, Matthew turned his gaze to Liana. The little girl was fully engrossed, utterly absorbed. After half a month of study, Liana had made tremendous progress. Liana age, 9 class, none talent, none specialties, none skills, knowledge 32 basic, meditation 21, evasion 36, jump 11. Attributes, strength 5 dexterity, 6 right arrow 7 constitution, 5 right arrow 7 intelligence, 14 right arrow 15 perception, 10 right arrow 11 charisma, 18 luck, -1 cursed with misfortune, evaluation, plagued by bad luck, destined for hardship. Liana's rapid improvement in knowledge and meditation was evident. Matthew had no doubt that within a month, both skills would reach the mid-tier. Her physical attributes had also begun to show considerable promise. Now that she had a steady food supply, her hidden bloodline ability was starting to manifest. If all went well, Liana could become a mage within a month or two. But her true potential lay in her bloodline ability. Should Matthew follow the original path and train Liana to become a legendary sorcerer? Or should he completely alter her fate? One thing Matthew couldn't ignore was that Liana's luck, which had previously reset to 0, had somehow dropped to -1 again. Could it be? If left unchecked, Liana's luck might continue to deteriorate and eventually return to -5. While Matthew pondered, Liana, having just finished a page, looked up and saw him. She flashed a shy, sweet smile. "Teacher, you're here. Knowledge +1 now 33. Her progress was so impressive, even fate seemed jealous. Her fair, rosy cheeks radiated a captivating charm. With a charisma 2 points higher than Matthew's, she was nearing the limit of mortal beauty, and Matthew couldn't help but admire her. "You've completed this book. You now have a solid grasp of both Elvish and Draconic. You can start reading spell scrolls and learning some cantrips. If there's anything you don't understand, come to me anytime." The little girl blinked in surprise and delight. She had been eager to start this. She was just about to stand and thank him when a hand gently ruffled her hair. Matthew, with a warm smile, said softly, "But don't overwork yourself. You're still growing, so make sure you sleep by 9 o'clock every night." Nodding obediently, the little girl was very well behaved, though a little anxious inside. "I'll have to study more during the day." Seeing how adorable she was, Matthew took out a teaching scroll that Adam Smith had acquired and began explaining it in detail. Liana quickly became immersed again, the magical world full of wonders captivating her completely. Sulin let out a quiet breath beside them, lost in her own thoughts, with a slight sparkle in her eyes. The bright sun rose into the sky, clearing away yesterday's fog. Eager adventurers poured out of the village, no longer able to wait to capture more trolls. People hustled about, one by one, beginning another busy day. Adam Smith stood on the wall, marveling at the sight of the thick smoke in the distance, observing the streams of people rushing into the lumber mills with a curious expression. Do they really need this many people to get the job done? Confirming that the next round of registration and line formations was proceeding as usual, Ralph, who was taking notes, responded calmly. All the products are immediately consumed, all contributing to the construction of Bay Village. Blinking in confusion, Adam Smith hadn't expected that response, pointing toward the other factories. In the distance, he asked curiously, "Are all the goods from those factories also being bought by the Lord?" Ralph, feeling a mixture of pride and slight exasperation, thought that the Lord's method of rapidly developing the territory was indeed very effective. However, it all depended on Matthew's continuous investment of funds and resources to maintain this pace. Ralph nodded with pride. "That's right. The Lord believes in ensuring everyone has a job and helping them adapt to working as much as possible, ensuring everyone had work. And the Lord buying up all the goods." Recalling the bustling shops throughout Bay Village, Adam Smith widened his eyes, muttering to himself, "This is an unprecedented business model. What exactly is the Lord planning?" Announcement: a big thank you to Mark Biederman for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 82, Adventurers Gone Mad. Chapter 82, Adventurers Gone Mad. A gentle breeze blew through the dark forest. A faint stench carried with the wind, spreading far and wide. 5 trolls fled in terror. Once the rulers of the dark forest, they had now become prey. Blood poured from their bodies, dripping down, and with the barbed bleeding arrows lodged deep, the more they ran, the weaker they became. 3 large nets dropped from the sky. 2 trolls that couldn't dodge in time were caught, bound tightly by ropes and stones fastened to the nets. The remaining 3 trolls cast a fearful glance at their captured comrades and frantically fled, not daring to stop. Over 10 strong adventurers rushed out, using specially made steel forks to pin the net ropes from afar, working together to subdue the trolls on the ground. Alice shot them a look of delight, shouting hurriedly, "Don't stop. Keep chasing them. Don't let them catch their breath. Tie up their arms and legs. And be on guard, watch out for other adventurers." After hearing Alice's orders, Chris quickened his pace, focusing on the tall figures running ahead. With a few swift strides, he leaped onto a small hill, steadied himself, and drew his bow. With a sharp whoosh, the arrow streaked through the air, aiming for the troll's back. "Ah!" The troll let out a scream as the arrow struck its knee, causing it to collapse to the ground. It thrashed wildly, reaching for the arrow's shaft. But as it grabbed hold, the brittle arrow shaft snapped in its grip. Now the troll's hopes of pulling the arrow out vanished instantly. Slick blood trickled down, filling the troll with terror. Just as it looked up to seek help from its comrades, all it saw was their retreating backs. Excited, Chris charged closer, but didn't approach the troll directly. Using a nearby sturdy tree for cover, he drew and fired another arrow. The troll, struggling to rise, was hit again, collapsing back to its knees with a heavy thud. Despite its incredible strength, the troll wasn't ready to surrender, swinging its heavy club in a desperate attempt to take Chris down with it. Chris, now well practiced, swiftly ran away, not intending to engage the troll head-on. Within just a few breaths, the other adventurers caught up. They patted Chris on the shoulder with excitement, then threw a prepared net over the troll. No matter how strong the troll was, it couldn't overpower 7 or 8 brawny adventurers. After struggling for a while, it was subdued. Chris decided not to pursue the others further. With his current contribution, he could already claim 15 gold coins. Pushing for more might make others envious. 10 minutes later, the last 2 trolls were also captured and locked up. The adventurers, brimming with satisfaction, stared at the ugly, stinking trolls and began chatting excitedly. "Haha, we've caught 6 trolls this morning. That's 300 gold coins in the bag. I wonder how those fools who split off are doing. I bet their haul isn't as good. Who knows what they were thinking. We're doing just fine, making good money and staying safe. We're lucky to have Captain Alice. We might not have even found this troll den without her. Yet, with Captain Alice around, there's no need to go off and take unnecessary risks. I heard some people headed toward the valley. Wonder how that's going for them. Let them scout ahead. Once they've got information, we'll head over." Exactly. The success of Alice's team was a microcosm of what other adventurer squads were experiencing. Thanks to Old Village Chieffield, the maps of Bay Village, and the provision of tools and methods, the experienced adventurers were efficiently sweeping through the outer edges of the dark forest near Bay Village. Even without delving deep into the forest, the scattered trolls provided ample rewards. In fact, Bay Village expanded the lumberyard into a large outpost to accommodate the adventurers' needs. As long as the adventurers brought captured trolls to the lumberyard outpost, they could claim their bounties, rest, and spend their earnings. To everyone's surprise, not only could they purchase standard weapons and equipment here, but they also found a special offer. Blood replenishing potion, slightly better than a basic healing potion, priced at 40 silver coins. Proof of troll capture required. Limited to one per person per day, Alice marveled at the blood-replenishing potion in her hand. She had heard of its fame and had seen the soldiers use it with great effect. Compared to basic healing potions, which were hard to find and cost over 50 silver coins, blood-replenishing potions offered adventurers much greater safety and could even boost their earnings. Many savvy adventurers, thinking ahead, dug into their pockets and bought the blood-replenishing potion. After all, spending a few dozen silver coins to ensure their lives was a small price to pay when they stood to earn much more. Besides the blood-replenishing potion, something else caught the adventurers' interest. Custom magic equipment. Adventurers with 50 contribution points can pay 100 gold coins to commission a piece of standard-grade magic equipment, either with their own materials or purchased at cost. A standard-grade magic item was worth at least 300 gold coins, not including materials. Most importantly, most magic equipment was impossible to buy. Even with money, adventurers often lacked the materials and the means to acquire it. This was especially true for adventurers without powerful connections. This obvious benefit further stoked the adventurers' excitement. It drove them to the brink of madness. Take Alice's team, for example. They immediately cancelled their afternoon rest. They headed eastward to the outskirts of the dark forest, hunting for more troll camps. After all, the existing troll camps had either been cleared or were in the process of being cleared by other adventurers. Some of the stronger adventurer teams even ventured deeper into the dark forest. There, the trolls were more numerous and more densely packed. The adventurers' restlessness brought many changes. They earned more, but they also spent more, happily rewarding themselves for their efforts. As a result, Bay Village saw a spike in sales of all types of weapons and goods to adventurers. The pricier items included weapons, alchemical potions, tools, and trap materials. The cheaper goods ranged from clothing, tents, food, and drink to various other supplies. Gradually, everyone began to realize that the factories set up along the riverbank could produce nearly all the daily necessities they needed. No one understood this better than the merchant Adam Smith. He had recruited the talent for these productions, and it was his money that bought the machinery and tools. But he never imagined the Lord's ambitions would be so grand. 20 to 30 factories, 500 to 600 workers, with wages alone totaling hundreds of gold coins each month. While these everyday goods are relatively cheap to produce and of decent quality, they don't have much competitive edge. Could it be the Lord has another plan? Though smart, Adam Smith couldn't comprehend everything, as he hadn't reached the heights required to fully grasp the Lord's intentions. Chapter 83, Matthew's Thoughts. Chapter 83, Matthew's thoughts. Walking into the clothing factory, Matthew immediately saw dozens of busy figures. Under the direction of several mid-level tailors, the female workers with sewing experience were working according to a tight and orderly schedule. What surprised Matthew was the cutting of each piece of clothing was done by a single female worker. This made him internally question, something's off. Why are they still using such primitive production methods? Even though they have sewing machine-like tools, why haven't they implemented basic assembly line production? Before his rise in the game, Matthew had visited some factories in big cities, even though it was to work as a bodyguard for security missions. He had seen their production processes. Various semi-automated production machines were not inferior to those in the real world. The standard assembly line production process, combined with a magical touch of integrated control, had left Matthew marveling for quite some time. But now, the reality left Matthew confused. He never expected the production techniques to be so backward. My previous self's memories mostly focused on learning spells and studying arcane magic. The bits of knowledge I have are just family insights picked up over time. I still lack a comprehensive understanding of the world's basic systems. I must gather more information. Thinking this, Matthew's expression remained unchanged. He waved to the workers, signaling them to continue their work. He overheard their whispered conversations, mostly excitement and joy. Beside him, Ralph the steward reported, "Currently, the clothing factory employs 6 mid-level tailors and 45 other workers. More recruits are on the way. The main output is linen clothing. So far, we've produced 540 sets, with an average of 100 sets per day. In the future, production could reach 300 sets per day. The total monthly wage expenditure is 5 gold and 25 silver coins, and we can produce 3,000 sets of clothing per month, each valued at 50 copper coins. If sold, it would generate 15 gold coins." Ralph's eyebrows relaxed slightly as he said this, clearly satisfied with the factory's profitability. After all, the Lord had been spending money lavishly, continually investing in the territory's development, and no amount of wealth could keep up with that pace. Finally, there were some returns to see. After leaving the clothing factory, Matthew patiently toured each of the other factories. He quickly noticed that most of the factories still used relatively primitive methods, more like large-scale workshops rather than advanced manufacturing facilities. He took his time talking with mid- and senior-level personnel and found that the situation was similar to that of the clothing factory. The overall production method was largely individualistic, differing only in terms of technical skill. As he left the industrial area, Matthew gazed thoughtfully at the steady flow of the Silvermoon River. The efficiency is still too low. Even without modifying the tools, simply implementing an assembly line could increase efficiency by 4 or 5 times. From this, it seems that the influence of players on the game world in my past life was quite significant. Many of the inventions came from players. These are assets I can use, but it will require the territory's development and my own strength to accumulate. At the current stage, even something as simple as assembly line production can't be introduced yet. Many improvements similar to assembly line production are too easy to copy before my strength reaches a certain level. Introducing simple inventions would be a death sentence. Other factions' interests are only one side of the equation. The unseen hand targeting me has yet to show itself. The enemy behind the assassination attempt hadn't surfaced yet, and Matthew didn't want to make himself too conspicuous. Mercy can be tolerated, and developing the territory can be accepted. Revolutionary inventions, however, could easily draw suppression. The plan to mass-produce alchemical potions on an assembly line will have to be postponed to avoid attracting unwanted trouble. Development is far more than just innovation. In this world full of hidden dangers, strength is the only real power. Realizing the importance of strength, Matthew decided to shift more of his focus towards personal power development, using the boundless possibilities of an arcanist to drive the territory's rapid growth. Fortunately, Matthew's previous heavy investment in the territory was already showing some returns. Ding! Your hired adventurer Chris has killed 2 gnolls, gaining 40 experience points. Ding! Your hired adventurer Alice has killed 1 gnoll warrior, gaining 60 experience points. Ding! Every battle the adventurers fought brought Matthew a steady stream of experience points. Though each individual battle didn't yield much, it accumulated to a substantial amount. From this perspective, Matthew's plan to attract adventurers had clearly succeeded. Just a few days of effort had already netted him over 5,000 experience points, causing his experience points to steadily rise again. It was clear that as the adventurers' success continued to grow, it would draw even more adventurers to the area. When that happened, the number of adventurers would increase, bringing Matthew even more experience points. Experience points were only the first benefit these adventurers provided. What Matthew valued even more was the clearance of dangers in the dark forest and the discovery and collection of various resources during their troll hunts. Riding in a carriage, Matthew and Ralph, the steward, arrived at the expanding lumberyard camp. Around the lumberyard, over 1,000 kobolds were enjoying their food. The cooked meals, seasoned with oil and salt, were a rare treat for them. Though they feared the occasional ray of sunlight, being able to eat their fill without fighting or suffering was the most comfortable and happiest time the kobolds had ever experienced. Digging soil and carrying rocks and sand was far better than being crammed into the pitch-black mines. The kobolds, with their simple minds, didn't think much beyond this. They were gradually getting used to this new life. The sharp crack of a whip startled the well-fed kobolds. They knew all too well it was time to start digging again. Matthew watched as the kobolds dug trenches that would enclose a lumberyard 4 times its original size. This growing camp would serve as Bay Village's base for exploring and developing the dark forest. In Matthew's plans, the camp's perimeter would be fortified with stone walls to conceal the kobolds' mining operations. Of course, the kobolds' numbers were still insufficient, and their bodies not yet strong enough. They needed more time to develop. Entering the camp and seeing more adventurers gathering there, Matthew's eyes filled with anticipation. The dark forest would be the first stepping stone for his rapid rise. Announcement: a big thank you to Samueli Humalalampi for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 84, Next Step, Promotion. Chapter 84, Next Step, Promotion. Around midday, the rest area in the lumberyard camp was bustling with activity. A large adventurers' hall had just opened for business. Adventurers came and went, resting and talking non-stop. Have you all heard? There are more troll camps to the east, but it's a bit far. There are groups of 7 or 8 trolls there, and it's not easy to handle with fewer numbers. The troll camps to the west are decent. I heard someone found over 10 of them. We're planning to check it out this afternoon. The information is public anyway, so let's discuss and avoid unnecessary competition. There are countless trolls in the dark forest, and the 200 of us can't possibly take them all down. True, but the golden hand is the only thing that matters. Haha, don't just focus on the trolls. The dark forest is rich with magical materials and herbs too. True, but those materials are scattered, and you need to meet certain standards to collect them. Isn't that even better? Slow and steady wins the race. It's a long-term business. I heard that the Lord is planning to set up some outposts in the larger resource areas for development. Yeah, I heard that too. You can apply to be stationed there and get 10% of the profits, but only if you're the discoverer or a qualified adventurer, right? That's great, isn't it? This place is amazing. Compared to other territories, it's like a paradise for adventurers. You said it. Adam Smith overheard these adventurers' conversations, finding them quite intriguing. What interested him even more was that despite earning considerable bounties, these adventurers were not stingy about spending their money here. He began to understand why the Lord had gone to such lengths to build an adventurer's hole here. What really excited Adam Smith was the 2,000 bottles of blood revitalizing potions in his storage belt. Ralph had even promised him that each week they would be able to supply no less than this amount of blood revitalizing potions. This meant that the Lord, who spent money like water, could earn over 4,000 gold coins each month. Adam Smith didn't know how the Lord produced so many blood revitalizing potions, but guessed it had something to do with the captured trolls. Does this mean that the more trolls captured, the higher the potion production will be? What Adam Smith didn't know was that just from yesterday to today, in a span of over 10 hours, the mutated clay golem Peak had produced 1,000 bottles of blood revitalizing potions through continuous mass production. Every 2 living trolls meant 40 additional bottles of blood revitalizing potions each day, which equated to an extra 10 gold coins daily. The return on investment could be recouped within 10 days. The rate of return was terrifying. As Matthew flipped through his spell scrolls, he glanced at the thoughtful Adam Smith, not bothering to engage in cryptic games with him, and said calmly, "Continue purchasing magical materials, especially moonlight flower, red amber leaf, living root grass, and earth elemental crystals. You can keep buying slaves and don't stop recruiting peasants. As for the refugees from the south, take as many as you can get." Matthew had an insatiable demand for population. Memorizing the list of materials, Adam Smith nodded quickly, sensing the importance of the matter. "I'll try to conceal the types and quantities of materials as much as possible and bring back as many seeds as I can. As for the peasants, that won't be a problem. Most cities are happy to reduce the number of people in their slums. Most peasants are also eager to start new lives. I've heard that the unrest in the south is intensifying, and more refugees are fleeing northward. No lord wants to take them in, so there shouldn't be any issues on that front." Adam Smith had a vague understanding of the southern unrest. He had heard that it was caused by the conflict between 2 great arcanists and their factions, which had thrown 2 provinces with millions of people into chaos. Even the Seventon Council didn't seem inclined to intervene. Matthew knew much more about the situation, having been involved himself and resurrecting multiple times because of it. He knew this conflict would last for more than a decade and would only grow more intense. So he had his eye on the millions of refugees. If he could gather even just a tenth of these unwanted refugees, he could easily assemble a population in the millions. Attracting population was a foundation, and Matthew wasn't going to pass up recruiting adventurers either. Spread the word in Blood Moon City and other cities to draw in more adventurers. The more hands, the better. My promotional campaign will be thorough and will lead adventurers directly to us. Rubbing his hands in anticipation, Adam Smith put away the illusion spell crystal. He was already envisioning his return to Blood Moon City, where he would flood the market with blood revitalizing potions and take his trading business to new heights. Even good wine can go unnoticed in an alley. As a businessman, he knew the importance of advertising. Half an hour later, enduring the discomfort brought on by spatial teleportation, Adam Smith returned to Blood Moon City. Once his body recovered, Adam Smith, along with his guards, quickly left the teleportation hall and headed back to his merchant guild's headquarters. After ensuring his safety, Adam Smith let out a long breath. He immediately placed the 2,000 blood revitalizing potions into a magic-sealed box marked with its destination. With a wide smile, Adam Smith had already decided to wring some extra profits from a few of his business partners. Meanwhile, wiping the sweat from his forehead, Adam Smith found his assistant and gave him careful instructions. Immediately send more personnel to other cities' adventurers' guilds, slums, and slave markets. We need to recruit as many people as possible. His experienced assistant nodded and took the paper from Adam Smith, carefully tucking it into his pocket before rushing out. After waiting for a moment, Adam Smith turned to his captain of the guard and said, "Prepare to recruit more guards. The size of our caravans will be increasing, so we must ensure their safety." The captain of the guard nodded silently and gestured for 2 guards to make the necessary arrangements. Unable to sit still, Adam Smith began planning for the next steps. Establish a communication route with the southern provinces and spread word about Bay Village to attract more refugees. Buy food from other cities and nearby villages and set up more food storage warehouses. Contact the Truth Spell organization. Bay Village needs more magical materials. Chapter 85. Rapid Development. Chapter 85. Rapid Development. Year 129, April 3rd. Bay Village. The last old wooden house was completely dismantled. Over the next few days, a row of sturdy, two-story wooden houses would rise in its place. Looking out at the square and orderly housing clusters, there was an undeniable sense of beauty and structure. Outside the houses, over 1,000 kobolds were busy at work. They were preemptively digging drainage ditches and sewers, preparing for the construction of more houses and neighborhoods. The changes within the village were astonishing. The sights beyond the village were even more remarkable, even for those who had witnessed the series of transformations firsthand. Jiffin still found the scene in front of him somewhat unbelievable. The once vast reeds outside the village had been turned into water-filled fields. Farmers were seen driving oxen to turn over the submerged soil, pulling out the remaining roots and stems of the old plants. The square fields stretched out as far as the eye could see, giving Jiffin a sense of excitement and anticipation. Soon I'll have my own plot of land here, but I don't know the first thing about farming. Scratching his head, Tom laughed heartily. Even he could grasp the importance of this newly cultivated land. Don't worry, soldiers' fields will have dedicated workers farming them, and will get 80% of the harvest. Jiffin, who had a keen memory, gazed at the slowly rising black smoke in the distance. The busy farmers were already starting to clear new land. Break time's over, keep moving. Captain Sean's loud order brought Jiffin and Tom back into line, their posture revealing the disciplined training they had undergone. Observing the rhythmic footsteps of the soldiers behind him, Captain Sean couldn't help but feel deeply impressed. In just over 10 days of training, they had achieved such remarkable results, filling Sean with boundless admiration for the Lord. Such an incredible training method, and the Lord reveals it without hesitation. Why is that? Hearing Sean's words, Matthew casually smiled and said, "Why?" "Because no one else can replicate it. And why couldn't anyone else replicate it?" "It's because, my lord, you've provided the soldiers with so much." Ralph, who was busy calculating expenses, couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement as he looked at the strong soldiers gathered at the barracks, continuing to tally up the figures. "My lord, we currently have 320 soldiers. And the next selection will be in a week. Last month's salary expenditure was 80 gold coins, with an additional 70 gold coins spent on supplies, totaling 150 gold coins. Matthew glanced at the burly barbarian soldiers, observing their muscular physiques and loud, fierce roars, a satisfied smile creeping onto his face. It only costs the bounty of 3 trolls to train soldiers, and it's more than worth it. As long as we have these soldiers, we can freely plan our development and enforce it with powerful measures. Ralph nodded, having come to appreciate the benefits of this strategy. These loyal, elite, and easy-to-train soldiers became the best representation of the Lord's authority. With their presence, even the hundreds of adventurers had become obedient. However, Ralph still held a small grudge against these unruly barbarian soldiers. Sensing Ralph's thoughts, Matthew pointed to the still energetic instructor Arnold and said, "With sufficient food, good treatment, the expectations of their families, and strict training, I'm sure these barbarian soldiers will shape up. Even the kobolds listen obediently now. I'm confident they'll come to understand the reality of things." The Lord's resolute and unyielding words left Ralph feeling pleased and reassured. The Lord was kind and generous, yet he also possessed the determination to control everything. Flipping to the next account book, Ralph continued his report. Last month, 42 new factories were established, employing a total of 679 workers. These factories produce all the daily necessities for Bay Village, with total expenses of 140 gold coins and revenue of 60 gold coins, and an additional stockpile worth 540 gold coins. The factories, set up at great expense to recruit talent, had begun to form the foundation of a light industrial manufacturing base. What pleased Matthew the most was that the commoners were gradually adapting to their new roles as workers, without even realizing it. We currently have 32 land reclamation teams, totaling 250 people. Last month, we reclaimed 500 acres of land. If the number of workers continues to increase next month, we estimate we could reclaim 14,000 acres. Looking at the flat fields, Ralph nodded with satisfaction, pleased with the achievements of the land reclamation teams. Nearby, Old Village Chief Field was dumbfounded, muttering to himself, "We reclaimed 500 acres last month. And 14,000 next month. Is that even possible?" Field vividly remembered that before the Lord arrived, Bay Village had only 12,000 acres of farmland in total. This had been the result of decades of continuous development, and now, in less than 2 months, the cultivated land area was about to double. Overwhelmed by joy, Field found himself unable to contain his emotions. Gazing out over the vast, unclaimed land, a sense of grandeur and ambition surged through him, Perhaps one day all the land we can see will be our fertile fields. Although Ralph didn't fully understand Field's deep emotional connection to the land, he recognized the importance of farmland to the territory. Farmland that produced food was the most basic and essential wealth of any territory. The more farmland developed, the higher the territory's income, and the more population it could sustain. Speaking of population, Ralph became even more excited. The total population of Bay Village has now reached 782 people. There are also 700 kobolds, with the first batch of kobold eggs about to hatch, adding another 100 kobolds, which will mature in 10 months. We also have 576 registered adventurers and 678 captured trolls. In the last month alone, the population of the territory has grown by about 5,000, and we expect to see a weekly increase of about 2,000 people going forward, staring at the newly built wooden houses standing in neat rows. The old village chief revealed a look of expectation as he added to Ralph's report. The first batch of new residents will take about 3 months to officially settle in Bay Village, but their desire to do so is very strong. The reason was simple: the Lord had offered them so much. Whether it was temporary housing, the land they would receive upon settling, or the opportunity to learn a craft and pursue development. For the vast majority of commoners, this was an irresistible lure. Ralph and Field exchanged a knowing glance, feeling a sense of harmony in their cooperation, and with it, greater confidence in the territory's rapid development. Last month's total expenditure was 46,500 gold coins, with total income of 49,500 gold coins, leaving a surplus of 3,000 gold coins. That's higher than the income of an average barony and rivals the overall revenue of a city. Reviewing last month's progress, especially the success of the potions, Matthew felt very satisfied. As expected, this is a highly divided world, where the value of magical items far exceeds that of ordinary goods. Magic truly is the primary productive force. Chapter 86, The Troll's Warning. Chapter 86, The Troll's Warning. The reason Matthew said this was because 99% of the income came from the contribution of the blood-replenishing potion. The production of blood-replenishing potions had become inseparable from Mountain, and the birth of Mountain ultimately stemmed from arcane power. Thanks to the tireless efforts of the adventurers, the most important raw material for making the blood-replenishing potion, the trolls, had already been captured, 678 of them. The area underground, just for imprisoning them, spanned thousands of square meters. Luckily for Matthew, digging underground was as simple as breathing for the kobolds. Otherwise, letting these trolls be seen by the public would surely draw unwanted attention. For now, to avoid overconsumption of the trolls and ensure sustainability, Matthew had divided the trolls into 4 groups, each taking turns to donate blood, allowing Mountain to produce 200 bottles of blood-replenishing potion every day. After setting aside a reserve for adventurers and soldiers, the revenue from the potion contributed around 3,000 gold coins daily. Handling about 170 trolls per day still hadn't reached Mountain's production limit. Matthew hoped the adventurers would continue their efforts, catching even more trolls. After all, the territory's development required continued financial investment. Matthew's own arcane growth would also need money, a great deal of money. Financial struggles would persist for a long time in the future. However, thanks to Adam Smith's consistent promotional efforts across various places, many adventurers had already teamed up with friends to hunt trolls, sharing their experiences. Over the course of about 10 days, hundreds of adventurers had been drawn to Bay Village. Except for a dozen or so unlucky greedy fools, most adventurers who survived made significant gains. 7 or 8 gold coins was the bare minimum. Some earned 20 or 30 gold coins or more. Many adventurers had already accumulated 100 contribution points and received custom magical equipment. Once this news was confirmed, the enthusiasm for capturing trolls soared even higher. More and more adventurers, having heard the news from passing merchant caravans, were making their way to Bay Village, eager to join this seemingly endless feast of riches. The trolls of the Dark Forest faced unprecedented eradication. Over 50 troll camps had been destroyed, with hundreds of trolls captured. The kobolds and gnolls in the Dark Forest were also facing hard times. The kobolds' misfortune stemmed from the fact that when they were discovered, they were attacked by kobolds led by Gold Tooth and Silver Tooth. Disobedient ones were killed, obedient ones were recruited. The gnolls' misfortune stemmed from the occasional trolls appearing in their camps, cooperating with them. The adventurers' frenzy originally could have lasted much longer in the Dark Forest. At the valley's edge, from the distant towering forest, a faint and chilling roar echoed. The sound reverberated through the valley, sending shivers of fear and dread down one's spine. On both sides of the valley, white rock cliffs and reddish ground were exposed. A small river meandered out, winding through the forest and eventually flowing into the Silvermoon River outside the dark forest. At the riverbank near the entrance to the valley, over 100 soldiers stood in neat formation, the atmosphere tense. The thick scent of blood filled Matthew's nostrils, his dark eyes reflecting a scene that made the soldiers seethe with anger. Over 20 human heads were impaled on bamboo stakes, arranged at the valley's entrance. The faces, bloody and disfigured, were twisted in fear and pain. That's level 8 warrior Karkit, only his head remains. Next to him is level 7 archer Zashel. He used to be so arrogant, isn't that level 6 rogue Tepka? Even he couldn't escape, 26 of them, all killed so gruesomely. I heard it was the trolls. Seems like it. The adventurers following behind recognized the horribly mutilated victims, their faces turning pale. In the deep ditches on both sides of the valley, bloodied bones covered with bite marks revealed the grisly fate of the dead. One shivering adventurer spoke to Matthew, recounting the harrowing experience. The trolls, hundreds of terrifying trolls, there were too many of them. They ate people, my teammates. I saw them surrounded, there was no way out. Through the adventurer's broken and trembling account, Matthew pieced together the story. As more adventurers poured in, the bounties grew increasingly lucrative. Most of the small troll camps near the dark forest's outskirts had already been cleared out. The options were to either search to the east or west, or delve deeper into the dark forest. Despite the map's clear warnings, a party of adventurers, led by 3 mid-tier professionals, ventured straight into Troll Valley. The outcome was predictable. The group of troll hunters encountered a massive troll hunting party. They were wiped out. It wasn't hard for Matthew to infer that these trolls had brutal, cannibalistic tendencies, were numerous, and possessed formidable combat strength. Many of the adventurers who came to investigate were shaken by the horrific sight and began to feel uneasy. Though they were adventurers willing to risk their lives for gold, it didn't mean they were eager to die. If the enemy was too fearsome or the mission too dangerous, they would choose to back off. The ease with which they had captured trolls these past few days had almost made them forget just how deadly and dangerous these creatures could be. Wait a minute, aren't trolls usually scattered in groups of 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6? Are you joking? Could their team have been defeated by just a few trolls? Did you not hear? There were at least 100 trolls. Are you saying that the trolls in the dark forest live together in large groups? That's impossible, right? Matthew could clearly see the adventurers' growing fear, but he wasn't in any particular hurry. The trolls in the dark forest weren't just clustering together, they even had their own cities and, in some cases, kingdoms. The vast expanse of the dark forest stretched across thousands of kilometers, filled with countless rivers and valleys. The Rot and Moss trolls, one of the 5 great troll clans, resided in this region. This was just the outskirts of the dark forest, still nearly 100 kilometers from the Rot and Moss trolls' hunting grounds. Greedy adventurers who delved too deep and stumbled upon a densely populated troll tribe. Well, it wasn't entirely impossible. However, Matthew knew the habits of trolls very well. Although they were cruel, murderous, and even cannibalistic, they rarely dared to leave the dark forest in large numbers. For thousands of years, the Netheril Empire's constant expansion wasn't just about clearing land and building cities. Large-scale wars and destructive measures were all too common. These trolls had no intention of leaving the valley en masse, giving Matthew time to prepare. If some adventurers still refused to heed warnings and insisted on courting death, he wouldn't be able to stop them. Have the bodies gathered and the others stay alert, watch out for troll ambushes. Matthew instructed Angela, raising his gaze towards the distant dense forest, feeling as though unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. Chapter 87, Assembling the Troops. Chapter 87, Assembling the Troops. Angela looked around vigilantly, sending out a squad of rogues to scout ahead with clear instructions. If you encounter danger, retreat immediately. The broken bodies were pieced together. Naturally, some of the remains were incomplete. Looking at the gathered corpses, Leon gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, feeling the anger within him rise. Such brutality gave him the urge to hunt down the trolls. However, when the order to retreat came, Leon chose to obey and fall back. Battles cannot be fought rashly in the heat of the moment. The lessons from his previous injuries had taught Leon a harsh truth. An individual's strength is ultimately limited. Just then, a piercing howl echoed from within the valley. The repeated cries sent chills down the spines of many adventurers, their faces pale with fear. Matthew, of course, knew that these were the cries of trolls. He could even make out the faint figures of trolls emerging from the dense forest. He glanced coldly at them and gestured to Angela for a retreat. Fall back. Maintain formation. Second squad of rogues, keep watch. First squad led the way. With some frustration, Angela sternly issued the retreat order, her cold gaze briefly flashing with killing intent as she looked at the trolls. The soldiers retreated in formation, now stronger than they had been half a month ago. Even while running, they maintained their discipline and unity. In contrast, the adventurers who accompanied them seemed dispirited, discussing the trolls in the valley amongst themselves. It was clear that, despite the trolls' brutal and straightforward warning, it was highly effective. Those afraid of death needed no further persuasion, and even those less fearful wouldn't want to be eaten alive. Of course, Matthew would have to respond to such an obvious warning from the trolls. When the enemy is strong, you respond with even greater strength. With so many adventurers lost in a single blow, if the situation wasn't handled properly, it would certainly dampen the enthusiasm of the current adventurers. Matthew's plans required more and more adventurers to drive them forward. The reason Matthew didn't immediately attack was due to caution and prudence. He was still under the influence of a -3 luck penalty, and despite having over 100 battle-hardened soldiers under his command, he wasn't willing to charge in without fully understanding the situation. With the 100+ trolls, really the total number of trolls in the valley. Know thyself and know thy enemy, and you will never be defeated in 100 battles. With this in mind, Matthew led his troops back to the logging camp, where he immediately issued new adventurer missions. A 1,000 gold coin bounty for gathering detailed information on the number of trolls in the valley. A 2,000 gold coin bounty for locating the trolls' camp in the valley. Matthew knew that to get brave adventurers, he had to offer big rewards. Now all the adventurers knew. This mysterious arcane lord was preparing for something big. And indeed, that was the case. Soldiers without specific assignments began gathering. The total number of soldiers had reached 270. The number of professionals had risen to 120. 20 soldiers had already been promoted to level 2. The large growth in numbers was partly due to the addition of more than 50 barbarian slaves to the ranks. Individually, these barbarians were excellent fighters, though their coordination left much to be desired. Fortunately, Matthew and Angela didn't expect them to be as perfectly disciplined as the other soldiers. They simply hoped these barbarian warriors could serve as a fearless shock force, enhancing the offensive capabilities of their forces and enriching their tactical options. As the soldiers marched in orderly formation, gathering in the designated area, the adventurers, having heard the news, also stopped what they were doing and returned from all directions. Upon seeing the neat formations of elite soldiers, the once anxious adventurers began to calm down. After all, the Lord's intentions were clear. He was highly likely to clear out the trolls entrenched in the valley. Along with this came a significant influx of various supplies. These included, but were not limited to, food, meat, clothing, tents, and other necessities. Behind these provisions, several oversized weapons immediately caught the attention of the adventurers. Damn, they brought out the heavy crossbows. Looks like they're planning to skewer some trolls. What's in those wagons? They look like they're carrying something heavy. Only a territory like this could prepare such restricted supplies. Looks like they're getting serious. Why are there so many kobolds, don't you know? All the kobolds in the nearby area were either wiped out or recruited. What are the kobolds for? Cannon fodder. The adventurers discussed the kobolds with a mix of curiosity and disdain. After all, it might make sense for kobolds to be useful against other creatures when their numbers could give them an edge. But against trolls over 2 meters tall, weighing more than 300 pounds each, with formidable regenerative abilities, the kobolds wouldn't even be able to tire the trolls out. The leaders of the kobolds, Gold Tooth and Silver Tooth, glanced at the adventurers with their vertical slit pupil eyes, showing little emotion. They only cared about the opinions of Yea and Matthew. The adventurers didn't matter to them. However, some sharp-eyed individuals began noticing something unusual. Alice, stroking her enchanted dagger, observed the obviously different kobolds with a thoughtful expression. Compared to the usual filthy, small, and chaotic kobolds, these kobolds were clearly much stronger and dressed in neat, uniform grey work clothes. The iron picks at their waists and the shovels on their backs were all brand new. What surprised Alice the most was that whenever a kobold disobeyed, a stronger kobold would immediately step in, delivering a few harsh lashes that quickly brought the offender into line. It was too strange. The entire kobold group gave her an oddly organized impression. Aside from the kobolds, the barbarian warriors also caught her attention. Unlike most barbarian soldiers, who lacked proper armor and often fought bare-chested, these barbarian soldiers were in stark contrast. Each one was clad in full metal armor, resembling towering metal golems. Though their movements were not as synchronized as the other soldiers, they still displayed a certain level of discipline. It was bizarre to witness this in barbarian warriors. Matthew glanced at the assembled troops, paying little mind to the scattered adventurers gathering around. He had sensed a growing danger, which made him somewhat curious. Had the trolls actually followed them out? What were they planning? Could it be that their target was him? Interesting. Chapter 88. Taking the initiative. Chapter 88. Taking the initiative. The expanded logging camp was no longer the small logging site it used to be. The trees within 500 meters had all been cut down. Along with the shrubs and weeds, everything had been cleared, ensuring an unobstructed view of the surroundings, enabling early warnings upon spotting enemies. A moat connected to the river, 3 meters wide, effectively isolated external dangers. The camp was surrounded on all sides by towering stone walls. Stones gathered by thousands of kobolds were tightly stacked, forming walls 5 meters high. The top of the 4-meter-wide stone walls was wide enough to accommodate 4 rows of soldiers for defense. Several stone battlements and watchtowers were built on each side. Heavy crossbows protruded from the battlements, operated by soldiers aiming at the forests hundreds of meters away. Seeing these military-grade weapons, the adventurers felt a sense of reassurance. Although the regenerative abilities of the trolls were indeed formidable, these heavy crossbows were no joke either. On 8 lookout towers, each over 10 meters tall, a dozen scouts stood watch. At the back was a well-fortified stone building. Inside, reserve soldiers could be stationed, ready to provide support at any time. All kinds of defense materials and equipment were stored, ready for rotation, repair, and replacement. By military standards, this camp could withstand an attack from 2-3 times its number if fully manned. From Arnold's seasoned perspective, the defensive tightness here even rivaled some military outposts. Soldiers gathered in the camp, neatly lined up and looking toward Angela, their young commander, who was boosting morale. Are you all satisfied with your current lives? Excellent weapons, generous pay, and the hope of a better future, things they had never dared dream of. All the soldiers shouted in unison, satisfied. The deafening shouts echoed through the camp, and the overwhelming morale impressed the surrounding adventurers. Who gave us this life? The Lord. Angela's voice was solemn and clear as she called out, if anyone wants to take away our lives and make us return to the past, what should we do? The soldiers were suddenly reminded of the implications, and their minds instinctively reflected on this question. Go back to the past. To the days of not having enough to eat and watching their families starve. Never. Leon and Captain Sean exchanged a glance, shouting in unison, kill. 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 The other soldiers quickly followed suit, shouting at the top of their lungs, kill. 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 The shouts thundered through the camp, thick with killing intent. The adventurers were visibly startled, and the flocks of birds around the camp took off in panic. Such a powerful and imposing army sent shivers down the spine. This wasn't a spontaneous act, it was the result of extensive training. Naturally, Matthew was deeply invested in ideological education, because he had once witnessed a truly invincible army. An army with faith. As for now, the reason Matthew had gathered his forces was to take the offensive. To strike first. The -3 luck value represented considerable danger. But Matthew understood that luck was like a poison boil, while lancing it was painful, leaving it to fester could be fatal. Don't toy with fate, break it with courage. 200 soldiers in formation, 60 shield bearers, 100 spearmen and 40 archers, led by Captain John and Captain Sean, 100 barbarian soldiers led by Old John and Arnold, a total of 40 scouts led by Field, 20 wagons will follow, form ranks, prepare to move out. Angela's clear orders echoed through the area, causing the adventurers' faces to shift. Are they planning to go into battle? Are they crazy? Why don't they just hold the camp and wait for the trolls to attack? What's the reasoning behind this? What should we do? The adventurers had never expected that the soldiers of Bay Territory would choose to fight the trolls in the wild instead of defending the camp. It was just too crazy. Old John had initially doubted Matthew's orders, but when the latter pointed in the direction of Bay Village, the veteran soldier understood completely. The territory was in a stage of rapid development, and it was precisely because the security problem had been solved that Bay Village could attract more and more people to join. If these trolls bypassed the logging camp and attacked the mostly defenseless civilians, it would deal a massive blow to the village's rapid growth. So they had to take the initiative. And they had to win. Seeing how lost and confused the adventurers were, Matthew smiled slightly and turned to Ralph, saying softly, issue a task at the adventurers' hall. During the upcoming 2 days of battle, the team that kills or captures the most trolls will receive a 2,000 gold reward. With a heavy reward comes brave men. The adventurers had been so apprehensive because the risks they faced outweighed the potential gains. When this news spread, the entire camp of adventurers erupted into excitement. What are you waiting for? Get ready for battle. The adventurers' hall has lowered the price of blood-replenishing potions. Everyone go buy some quickly. I need a mid-tier warrior for my team. We already have 4 mid-tier professionals. Our team has 30 people. We just need 4 more good hands. All rewards will be split equally. Hurry up and join us. If we follow the soldiers, we might be able to pick off some stray trolls. That makes sense. Wait for me, I need to buy some spell scrolls first. Spell scrolls. You're really going all out, duh. Haven't you figured it out yet? This 2000 gold reward doesn't interfere with our usual troll capture tasks. Double the rewards. Exactly. The heated discussions reached Matthew's ears, and he was very pleased with the adventurer's keen awareness. Indeed, if you want your tools to show initiative, you need to dangle a few surprises in front of them now and then to keep them hooked. Matthew had been in this world for almost 2 months and had once worried. With just his own strength, and without the billions of players from his previous world, could he truly change the fate of this land and its people? But as his understanding of this real world deepened, Matthew gradually cast aside his former doubts. He didn't have players, but he had adventurers, more numerous and more obedient. As long as they were paid well, adventurers' enthusiasm for completing tasks even exceeded that of the players. One played games, the other risked their lives. Moreover, unlike the unpredictable players, adventurers were much easier to control and manage. As Matthew learned more about the adventurers' earnings and treatment in other regions, his confidence only grew. These people risk their lives so hard. What's wrong with earning more money? As long as you take my money and work for me, you're my good brothers. Brothers, charge with me. Under the hopeful gazes of countless adventurers, Matthew and Angela led their high-spirited soldiers out of the camp. The adventurers could no longer hold back and eagerly followed. It wasn't that they wanted to mooch off the Lord, they simply found it rare to have such a great Lord to work for. Indeed, they had to ensure his safety. Otherwise, where else would they go to earn so much money? Chapter 89, Paving the Way with Gold. Chapter 89, Paving the Way with Gold. The bright red glow flashed as it cut through the air in an arc. It illuminated the dense underbrush of the dark forest, exposing all the hidden figures. A few growling jackals darted out, snarling briefly before noticing the sheer number of humans, and with a few whimpering sounds, they turned to flee with their tails tucked between their legs. Swift arrows flew forth, instantly piercing through their throats. Several scouts rushed out, grabbing the corpses and returning before the light faded. As the red glow gradually dimmed, the surroundings once again fell into the dark and eerie silence that matched the forest's name. The whoosh sound returned, and another burst of light arose. Alice, her face illuminated by the red light, winced slightly with a pained expression and muttered to herself, "That must be the 9th signal flare scroll, right? Even if it's just a 0-level spell scroll, it could still sell for 20 gold coins." Chris, who had always been on the front lines bearing the greatest risks for the group, couldn't help but murmur with some confusion, "What's the point of this? Scouts could have handled this, why spend so much money?" Alice snapped out of her moment of distress and quickly reasoned it out with a hint of envy, saying, "What else? It's for undeniable safety. Even if scouts lead the way, it's not guaranteed to be foolproof. Plus, our lord isn't exactly short on money." The phrase, "not short on money," made the adventurers feel a bit sour. But they soon realized that it was actually a good thing. If the lord was short on money, who would we turn to for bounties? After thinking it over, the adventurers gradually grew numb to the lord's habit of throwing gold around and began to feel a stronger sense of loyalty. After all, who wouldn't want to follow a wealthy lord who was willing to spend? Hearing the adventurers' comments, Matthew didn't pause his wealth display and pulled out another scroll, pouring 5 points of mana into it and casting it immediately. The flashing red light continued to illuminate the surroundings. Matthew was in no rush. He gently stroked the eager Yaya, stopping her from scouting ahead. If they were truly dealing with a troll clan or tribe, it was very likely there were high-tier professionals among them. Letting Yaya venture out alone would be too dangerous. So Matthew preferred to spend more money to ensure safety. Additionally, his frequent use of spell scrolls served as a subtle message to the adventurers. "I have scrolls available. If you need them, you can purchase them. Money is important, but life is more important. As long as you're alive, you can keep making money." Although most of the adventurers weren't exceptionally strong, generally ranging from level 3 to 7, they could already use spell scrolls. Matthew intended to cultivate this habit among them. Moreover, thanks to Matthew's constant spending, the group's confidence also grew. If the lord was willing to spend hundreds of gold coins just to travel, how much more would he be willing to spend on battle? A wealthy spellcaster could be impossibly strong. Under such circumstances, the group maintained good morale as they advanced 20 meters from the riverbank at the edge of the dark forest. On the opposite side lay the valley's entrance. The bright light illuminated the crystalline surface of the river, reflecting the sinister figures gathered at the riverbank. With the light growing brighter, the adventurers could now see the trolls that had been lurking nearby. Cold sweat ran down everyone's backs as they looked at Matthew with admiration. "Thank goodness for the Lord's gold, otherwise we would have been ambushed by those trolls." These trolls are incredibly strong and intimidating, each one a mid-tier professional armed with armor and weapons. If they had ambushed us, we'd have suffered heavy losses. That was close. Has the Lord anticipated the trolls' moves? The Lord is a powerful and mysterious arcanist. Maybe he used prophecy to foresee these trolls, or perhaps he already knows this battle is destined for victory. So, we can relax then. That's true, but we still need to be careful. Even in victory, people can die. Good point. Hearing this, Matthew had to admit that the adventurers had quite the imagination, but these were the brothers he needed. His gaze fell on the distinctive trolls ahead. They were about the same height as regular trolls, but their bodies were twice as muscular, bulging with sinewy strength and emitting a menacing aura. Unlike the previous trolls, who were dressed in rags and wielded crude wooden clubs, these trolls were clad in hardened leather armor and wielded metal weapons. Though rusted and chipped, the weapons were solid, and most were heavy-duty. Even in the sunlight, their sharp edges still gleamed menacingly. More importantly, these trolls weren't acting with the mindless aggression typical of their kind, attacking like wild beasts. They had likely tracked the group for several kilometers but remained disciplined, holding back until they saw an opening, a level of patience and discipline stronger than that of most soldiers and adventurers. They were foes not to be underestimated. The detailed stats revealed to Matthew the origin of these trolls. Name: Rottenfang race, troll identity, Rotmos clan Forsaken Camp hunting party leader. Age: 42 class, level 9 hunter talent, extraordinary regeneration. Specialties: advanced specialty hunter's heart, intermediate specialty weakness detection, intermediate specialty rapid shot. Skills: ambush LV2, poisoned arrow LV2, traps LV1. Legacy: intermediate path of the hunter. Attributes: strength, 16 agility, 14 intelligence, 8 constitution, 18 perception, 12 charisma, 4 luck, -2 evaluation. His darkened countenance foretells a self-destructive path. So they really are from the Rotmos clan, the Forsaken Camp. That must be their base. If that's the case, their lair should be in the valley, and there are probably more trolls inside. I wonder if this Forsaken Camp still has any connection to the Rotmos clan. Valuable information flooded Matthew's mind as the trolls across the river let out sharp, angry roars. More howls echoed from the other side of the river as dozens of figures charged out, advancing toward Matthew's group. With 50 trolls on the far side and 70 on their side, Matthew now faced a total of 110 trolls, each with an average strength of around level 6. Even though the soldiers were confident, they couldn't help but feel pressured by the towering, hulking figures of the trolls. But at that moment, Matthew swiftly raised his staff and aimed at the 70 trolls on their side of the river, channeling his mana without hesitation. Fireball activated. The explosion's deafening roar was the signal to attack. Angela drew her sword, and a pale golden light spread from her, enveloping every soldier. The inspiration aura was active. Charge, Chapter 90. Spell Turret, Chapter 90. Spell Turret. The explosive fireball spell showcased its power as a devastating battle weapon. 3 trolls, unable to dodge, were instantly gravely injured, their bodies charred black as they fell to the ground, screaming in agony. The flame's searing heat counteracted their regeneration ability, leaving them unable to recover even if they weren't dead, completely out of the fight. The trolls' anguished screams only fueled their comrades' anger. Naturally cruel and confident in their strength, they roared defiantly at the charging soldiers, showing no fear as they attacked. However, intimidated by the might of the fireballs, the trolls, who had been standing in a line, instinctively spread out. Seeing their response, Matthew quickly realized that these trolls must have had experience fighting spellcasters before. It was clear that using fireballs to wipe out 10 or 20 of them in one go, as he had done with the gnolls, would not be possible this time. But rather than being frustrated by their reaction, Matthew was actually pleased. Without hesitation, he cast a second fireball. Boom! The rapidly moving fireball struck the 2 trolls at the front. Matthew's swift casting caught the trolls off guard. The expanding flames engulfed their massive bodies, quickly filling the air with the foul stench of burnt flesh. As the flames dissipated, the 2 tenacious troll warriors lay on the ground, barely clinging to life. Their scorched bodies trembled and smoked, and after a final twitch, they breathed their last breath. Ding! You killed a level 6 troll warrior, gaining 40 experience points. Mana Drain activated, restoring 5 mana points. Ding! You killed a level 6 troll warrior, gaining 60 experience points. Additional skill point X1 awarded. The sweet sound of kill notifications made Matthew raise an eyebrow. Watching the trolls spread out even further, he licked his lips with excitement. Just what I needed, time to rake in some skill points. As the thought passed through his mind, Matthew raised his staff again, unleashing a barrage of speeding blue projectiles. The storm of magic missiles pounded a particularly strong troll. With a series of sickening cracks, the charging troll collapsed to its knees. Its chest, riddled with a dozen wounds the size of bowls, gushed blood uncontrollably. Through the gaping injuries, the troll's regeneration powers could be seen desperately trying to heal its flesh. But more critically, its vital organs had been torn apart by the barrage of missiles. Yet another troll had fallen to Matthew's power. The charging soldiers cheered with renewed vigor. The 400 adventurers nearby widened their eyes with astonishment and joy. No longer hesitating, they joined the soldiers' flanks and rushed forward to encircle the trolls. Matthew's fearsome attacks had suppressed the trolls' momentum, forcing them to slow down. Although Matthew had burned through 100 points of mana, he paid it no mind as he raised his staff again. Deadly magic missiles streaked toward the next troll. The troll warrior, aware of the danger, tried to twist away. But its massive size and lack of agility made it too slow to dodge. 12 magic missiles struck it head-on. With Matthew's extraordinary 25 points of intelligence, plus the significant boost from his level 3 magic missile spell, each missile inflicted 6-7 points of damage on the troll. After being bombarded by 12 missiles, the troll's health was utterly depleted, and its life was snuffed out. The trolls, now visibly shaken, scattered even further in disarray. Rottenfang, the troll commander pulling his bow from the backline, noticed the unfavorable turn of events and urgently shouted, "Charge!" The spellcaster can't keep casting forever. The trolls surged forward with greater speed, believing that only by closing in on the soldiers could they avoid the deadly magic. Their fear of death fueled their furious roars, as they tried to frighten their much smaller human foes. The soldiers, filled with a sense of strength, charged fearlessly at the towering trolls. Bang! Crack! Crash! The scattered trolls collided head-on with the advancing soldiers. To the astonishment of the adventurers, the soldiers maintained their orderly formation, even while moving forward. Archers at the rear continued to fire volleys of arrows as they ran, raining down on the advancing trolls. The leading trolls, covered in arrows, used their thick arms to shield their heads, charging forward despite their bloodied bodies. What amazed the adventurers most was that, just before the trolls made contact, the shield-bearing soldiers adjusted their stance and reformed their line. So in that first moment of collision, the trolls found themselves at a disadvantage. Right on time, Angela tore open a spell scroll. Inspire, the spell boosted the soldiers' overall strength and defense. The trolls were undoubtedly powerful, but even against the prepared soldiers, they gained no ground and were held back. A few particularly strong trolls managed to muscle their way past the shield defense, using their size and momentum. But before they could break through, Matthew had already pointed his staff at them from the rear. With a series of rapid-fire blasts, the trolls let out their death screams and fell into pools of blood. The soldiers, their morale soaring, quickly filled the gaps, and soon the spears from behind thrust forward in unison. The leading trolls were immediately punctured by several spear thrusts. The pain only fueled their fury, making them even more enraged as they ignored their wounds. Time and again, they pressed the attack, swinging their weapons viciously against the soldiers' shields. Several soldiers who were smaller and less strong struggled to withstand the brutal assault. Exhausted, they cried out for reinforcements. Angela, ever alert, shouted commands in a cold voice. "Spearmen, advance!" Soldiers from the rear stepped forward with their spears, forming a solid wall of points that pushed the disorganized trolls back. The weary soldiers quickly retreated. The reserve soldiers were ready and took their place without missing a beat. Meanwhile, the archers continued targeting the trolls' weak points, forcing them to retreat and giving their comrades a chance to swap positions. Matthew watched this scene with great satisfaction. Though the soldiers were individually weaker than the trolls, their coordination had withstood the most dangerous first wave. This indicated that their formation skills had reached a respectable level. After this difficult battle, the soldiers' combat abilities would undoubtedly improve further. Feeling a bit relieved, Matthew eagerly scanned the battlefield for his next target. Troll warriors with higher strength, eliminate them first. Troll archers with greater range, eliminate them next. It didn't matter if the trolls weren't killed outright. Even trolls needed time to recover from serious wounds before rejoining the fight. However, aside from a few who managed to stay far back, most trolls targeted by Matthew couldn't escape the deadly 12-hit combo of magic missiles. What terrified the trolls most was that Matthew, standing far behind, seemed to have an endless supply of spells. Every time the whizzing sound of a spell rang out, another comrade fell. Even the naturally savage trolls began to tremble with fear. Chapter 91, Troll Reinforcements. Chapter 91, Troll Reinforcements. The advancing adventurers witnessed the scene before them, shocked by the Lord's destructive power, and immediately lunged toward the isolated trolls. Cunning as they were, the adventurers had no intention of engaging the trolls head-on. They started with a barrage of ranged attacks. Once the trolls had bled enough and were weakened, they swarmed from the sides. Chains were thrown, spears readied, and ropes with hooks tossed in unison. Even the most formidable trolls couldn't hold out forever and were forcibly dragged away. The first time worked so well, it was quickly followed by a second. After successfully capturing a few trolls, the adventurers grew bolder. They circled around to the rear of the troll formation, targeting the isolated ranged trolls. Although the trolls fought back fiercely, there was no way one troll could hold off dozens of adventurers. Within seconds, they were bound and restrained. The trolls struggling in the water saw this enraging scene and roared furiously. What normally took only a few breaths to cross the river now seemed impossibly vast and unreachable. The adventurers, as expected, ignored the trolls with plenty of energy left in the water and focused on the ones engaged with the soldiers. Flanking and overwhelming their enemies from the sides was far more satisfying than a direct confrontation. Matthew, who had been actively casting spells, couldn't help but smile at the adventurers' keen tactics. In just a few moments, another 4 or 5 trolls had been captured by the adventurers working together. Peeking out from under Matthew's arm, Yaya glanced at the trolls being surrounded. Her bright eyes curved into crescent moons as she puzzled over the sight. "Papa, I sense more trolls are coming from afar. Should I fly over and check?" "I promise I'll be very careful." Matthew's pupils contracted slightly. Shaking his head, he spoke in a low voice to Angela beside him. "Pull back from the battlefield and reform the ranks." Looking at the remaining 40 or so trolls, Angela knew that with 3 or 4 more minutes, they could kill or capture them all. But if they retreated now, the adventurers would claim all the credit. However, being smart, Angela quickly understood and decisively followed the Lord's orders, shouting loudly, "All soldiers fall back 10 steps. Pull back from the battlefield and reform the ranks." Though some soldiers didn't understand the reason, their daily training and obedience had ingrained in them the habit of following orders without question. Without hesitation, they retreated from the battlefield, leaving the stubborn trolls to the eager adventurers swarming in. As the soldiers reformed their ranks, under Angela's command, they charged at the trolls who had just emerged from the river. This time, Matthew dispatched a squad of 20 armored barbarian soldiers to assist them. These heavily armored barbarian soldiers had been itching for a fight. Upon hearing Angela's order to advance, they took the lead, marching in step toward the approaching group of more than 50 trolls. The frustrated trolls, seeing their comrades' grim fate, roared in anger and charged at the advancing soldiers with fury. Clearly, these trolls still had great confidence in their strength and combat abilities. Had they seen their struggling comrades fail to break through the soldiers' lines, they might not have been so reckless. But Matthew understood the source of their confidence. From the mist-covered valley in the distance, more trolls were emerging. Matthew glanced at them briefly, and his data display quickly tallied the numbers: 325 trolls. An astonishing number. However, Matthew could tell that these new trolls were much weaker than the ones they were currently facing. Their average challenge rating barely reached 5+. Though a difference of just 1 level, it marked the gap between low-tier and mid-tier strength. Against these lesser trolls, Matthew believed his soldiers could hold their ground. Even though they had shields and were in a defensive stance, bolstered by auras and magical buffs, they could only barely withstand the stronger trolls. In fact, their defenses would likely be breached by sheer force. This was a significant difference in raw power. Against the weaker trolls, Matthew trusted that his soldiers could stand firm. So Matthew once again raised his staff, holding a spell scroll in his other hand. Melf's acid arrow, a streak of dark green magic shot out like lightning, striking an oncoming troll directly, leaving a gaping, acid-eaten hole in its chest. The troll collapsed instantly from the searing pain, staring in horror at the sight of its exposed internal organs. A swift arrow whizzed by, piercing the troll's chest and tearing through its heart with deadly precision. Blood gushed out as the troll's vision went dark, its pupils dilating endlessly. The troll's solid chest armor proved completely ineffective. Although Matthew had used 50% more mana for that spell, he continued to unleash Melf's acid arrows without stopping. Troll after troll screamed as they fell, and the soldiers, emboldened, held their ground against the onslaught. Angela remained calm and composed, issuing clear and steady commands. "Spearmen, advance. Push forward, archers, concentrate your fire. Shield-bearers, hold the line. Injured soldiers, fall back. Reinforcements, step in." The entire battlefield moved in harmony under Angela's leadership. Every soldier followed her orders without hesitation, like perfectly meshed gears, forming a powerful killing machine. This time, the trolls didn't manage to break through the soldiers' defenses, as they had before. The barbarian soldiers at the front demonstrated strength equal to that of the trolls. With their heavy armor and the enhancement from spells and auras, the barbarian soldiers fought the trolls to a standstill. Most of the barbarian soldiers were individually quite strong. Their naturally powerful physiques allowed most barbarian soldiers to boast strength above 14 points by adulthood. After specialized training and professional enhancement, some talented mid-tier barbarian soldiers could achieve extraordinary strength exceeding 20 points. Take Beelzebub, for example. With a mighty shove, Beelzebub sent a troll crashing to the ground and raised his massive double-headed axe. Clang! The troll's spiked club was split with a deep gouge, sparks flying as its bent arm dropped to its side. Beelzebub's thick neck bulged with veins as he lifted his axe high and brought it crashing down again. Thud! The poor-quality spiked club shattered, and as the troll stared in disbelief, the axe's sharp, gleaming blade sliced deeply into its chest. With a sharp upward flick of the axe, Beelzebub disemboweled the troll. With a twist of the handle, he deftly severed the troll's head. Though the axe weighed 50 or 60 pounds, in Beelzebub's hands, it was as light as a feather. No matter how powerful the troll's regeneration was, it couldn't recover from such grievous wounds. The rest of the soldiers, cooperating with the barbarian warriors, continued to press forward. One by one, the isolated trolls found themselves surrounded, forced to retreat under the relentless pressure from the soldiers. Chapter 92, encircled Chapter 92, encircled whoosh. A dark green melf's acid arrow shot through the air, making a sharp whistling sound, and struck a troll right in the chest. The severely injured troll staggered as Beelzebub stepped forward and swung his axe down on its neck. The stench of troll blood filled the air as Beelzebub glanced at the still sizzling wound on the troll's chest, feeling a chill deep in his heart. So this is the power of an arcanist. It's no less impressive than the warriors of the Eastern Empire. Beelzebub had initially thought that he and his kin would end up as cannon fodder in this battle, like so many others of their kind. But instead, what awaited them was a strict training regimen, far more demanding than he had imagined. What troubled Beelzebub the most was the old white-haired instructor. Though frail and aged, the instructor possessed terrifying combat experience and technique. After being beaten down a few times, Beelzebub had no choice but to follow his orders, restraining his kin and pushing them to train harder. In the following training sessions, Beelzebub and the other barbarian soldiers received weapons and equipment of unprecedented quality. When Beelzebub accepted the double-headed axe, a reward from instructor Arnold for his successful training, he was struck by a feeling he couldn't quite describe, something deep, something powerful. The full set of metal armor and the finely crafted iron weapons seemed like treasures that only the bravest warriors in the barbarian army could earn. Beelzebub had his doubts about why the Lord was treating them so well. Was it only to make them better cannon fodder? But Arnold, the old instructor, gave him a surprising answer. Never try to guess the intentions of a powerful, mysterious arcanist with your own limited understanding. Improving your strength and combat ability is the only way to repay the Lord. Let me be blunt, even if you all tried to escape back to your homeland, you wouldn't live better lives than you do here. Though the words stung, they left all the barbarian soldiers silent. The Lord who had bought them didn't bind them or throw them into prison. Instead, he had given them more than they ever imagined possible. Since then, Beelzebub and the others had settled into their new lives, putting aside their questions. After all, they had already lost too much. In Bay Village, they were placed into scattered families, each living apart but content with their stable, far better than their previous, wealthy lives. Not having to toil in the scorching sun and fierce winds, being able to feed their families, it was all they could have ever hoped for. In fact, many of the barbarian soldiers felt a deep sense of fear and anxiety, pushing them to work harder in training, afraid that if they displeased the Lord, they would lose this newfound life. As a result, every barbarian soldier carried with them high morale and an unwavering determination to fight any enemy. Bang! Beelzebub stepped forward, swinging his axe to strike a troll from behind, saving a fallen soldier in the process. The soldier gave him a thumbs up before being dragged to the backlines, gulping down a bottle of blood-replenishing potion, quickly regaining his strength. It was only then that Beelzebub remembered the 3 blood-replenishing potions strapped to his belt, true lifesavers in the heat of battle. Even a grunt like me gets to use these precious and expensive alchemical potions. Once, Beelzebub wouldn't have thought this way. He might have even thought it wasteful for the Lord to give him such valuable resources. But now his perspective had changed. After all, my life belongs to the Lord. I'll follow his orders until the very end. Watching from the backlines, Angela observed the chaotic clash between the trolls and the barbarian soldiers and couldn't help but shake her head. We still need to improve their coordination. But she was also impressed with the barbarian soldiers' combat abilities and spirit. Patiently, she directed the other soldiers to support their barbarian allies in battle. Their straightforward fighting style didn't require complex tactics. Simple adjustments would suffice for even better results. Listening to the satisfying sound of kill notifications, Matthew also noted the simple yet effective coordination between the barbarian soldiers and regular troops. It seems turning the barbarians into heavy infantry might be a good idea, but this is just the beginning, and the barbarians excel more in offense than defense. Considering their preference for heavy weapons, perhaps. Wait, where did the other trolls go? Suddenly feeling uneasy, Matthew turned his gaze toward the distance, and his expression shifted. The hundreds of trolls that had emerged from the valley hadn't crossed the river. Instead, they had disappeared into the surrounding forest. Yaya, who had been lying low, raised her head cautiously, her slit-pupilled eyes narrowing as she focused on the right side of the battlefield, speaking gravely. Over 100 stronger trolls are charging toward us. Hundreds more trolls are circling around, tightening the noose, circling around. A noose? So the trolls in front of them had just been bait. Matthew patted Yaya's head and clicked his tongue in thought. To devour us whole, these trolls are willing to sacrifice over 100 of their own. How intriguing. Though his tone was casual, inwardly Matthew remained alert. The previous battles may have gone smoothly, but that didn't mean he could let his guard down. This was a real, living world. There were no respawns here. Despite feeling uneasy about the trolls' strategy, Matthew didn't show any signs of panic. Maintaining the image of a mysterious, powerful figure was crucial. After alerting Angela, Matthew turned his attention to the remaining 20 trolls by the river, raising his staff without hesitation. Boom! The trolls, now trapped by the soldiers near the river, were hit hard by another fireball spell, 4 of them falling instantly. The remaining trolls struggled and fought desperately. Meanwhile, the soldiers pushed forward, racing to eliminate them before the next wave of trolls arrived. Both sides were racing against time. Just then, over 100 fully armed, towering trolls burst onto the battlefield, with piercing howls from the right flank. Matthew knew that in the forest to the left, hundreds more trolls were charging toward them. Angela, already warned, showed no signs of panic as she called out to steady the soldiers. Don't panic. Squads 2 and 3 continue the attack. Squads 1 and 4 fall back and regroup. Though the soldiers had been training for nearly a month, rapidly disengaging from a fierce battle and reforming their ranks remained a difficult task. By the time they managed to regroup, the 100+ trolls were already closing in. And now, from just over 100 meters away on the left side, the shadows of hundreds more trolls began to emerge. Matthew and his soldiers were now surrounded. The adventurers, still entangled with trolls in the distance, caught sight of this, their faces turning pale with shock. The adventurers' reactions were mixed. Some were already considering retreat, preparing to flee the moment things went south. Others wanted to help, but hesitated in the face of the trolls' overwhelming numbers and terrifying power, remaining on the outskirts. The largest group chose to watch and wait, ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. After all, adventurers weren't fond of unnecessary risks. Chapter 93, Fierce Struggle. Chapter 93, Fierce Struggle. Whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of arrows flew forward, striking the advancing trolls. These trolls, however, wore thick metal armor. Raising their arms to protect their heads, they charged forward undeterred as the arrows bounced off them. The sharp arrowheads only occasionally found their mark, slipping through the gaps in their armor. But such minor injuries were nothing to these robust trolls. Charging side by side, their blood-red eyes gleamed with cold cruelty and rage. Matthew recognized these trolls. They were the same ones who had broken the Moonhand slaver camp. A unique breed of trolls. The information on forsaken soldiers and warriors confirmed their identity. Clearly, these trolls wouldn't be up for any peaceful negotiations. Without hesitation, Matthew raised his staff. With a surge of mana, a streak of dark yellow light shot forward. This time, his target wasn't the charging trolls, but the pile of leaves ahead of them. Grease, a first-level spell. 2 or 3 dozen charging trolls slipped and slid as they barreled into the greased ground, nearly toppling over. Move aside, careful, damn humans, there's a spellcaster, rush him, kill him, I'll flay his skin. This doesn't seem dangerous. The remaining trolls instinctively halted their charge. Numerous menacing gazes were now fixed on Matthew. Disrupting their formation, however, was not Matthew's main objective. As he observed the trolls stumbling across the slippery ground, a red-hot beam shot from his staff. Boom! Blazing flames roared to life, instantly engulfing over 20 trolls caught off guard. In mere moments, these trolls became walking torches, their agonized screams striking fear into the hearts of the other trolls. Matthew could clearly see the damage numbers floating above the trolls' heads, -2, -3. However, the trolls' powerful regeneration kept working, and they wouldn't be so easily burned to death. Enduring the searing pain, these scorched trolls madly rushed toward the water's edge. For now, they were out of the fight. But the remaining trolls quickly spread out, growing even more enraged. They had their sights set on Matthew. And that was precisely Matthew's goal. A damage dealer who doesn't draw aggro is of no use at all. As the flames distracted and scattered the trolls, a strategy began to form in Angela's mind as she observed the barbarians holding the trolls at bay, and she decisively gave the order. Axe and sword teams form groups of 3 and take formation. Squads 1 and 4 form groups of 6 and combine the axe-wielder teams into wedge formations. She had the reserve force of over 80 barbarian soldiers step to the front, while the shield-bearers and spear-bearers spread out into smaller formations. Angela, with her sharp battle instincts, realized that these trolls fought in a style similar to the barbarians. They relied heavily on their individual strength, charging in wildly with little to no coordination. Using tightly packed formations, like before, would just deplete their forces too quickly. Instead, smaller units working in tandem would be more effective for cutting down the trolls one by one. The powerful barbarian soldiers would serve as the pillars, holding back the trolls' overall momentum. The soldiers, calming down, took comfort in the tall, imposing figures of the armored barbarian soldiers standing beside them. At the same time, Angela retrieved a glowing golden scroll and tore it open without hesitation. Mass Protection Scroll grants all allied units within 50 meters +2 strength, +2 constitution, +2 defense for 5 minutes. As the bright golden light enveloped the soldiers, the trolls roared in fury and charged at them with renewed ferocity. Bang, crack, clang, thud, thud, thud. The sounds of battle, the shouts, the howls, the clashing of weapons, rang out all at once. The trolls and soldiers clashed in a brutal melee. Angela's timely reformation of the battle lines proved to be a success. The disorganized trolls were effectively held off by the soldiers. With the added boosts to their stats, bolstered by both gold and willpower, the soldiers endured the trolls' first wave of attacks. The strengthened barbarian soldiers in particular displayed wild fighting styles, relying on their heavy armor to go toe-to-toe with the trolls. But about a dozen trolls deliberately bypassed the soldiers' defenses and headed straight for Matthew. The scattered arrows around them merely bounced off, sparking harmlessly against their armor. The dozen or so rogue wanderers around Matthew were clearly no match for the trolls' advance, and the soldiers by the river had only just finished off the last troll and couldn't reach him in time. At that moment, Matthew found himself surrounded by only a few comrades. In an instant, Matthew was plunged into danger. One of the trolls suddenly accelerated, its massive body moving with surprising speed like a missile, rapidly closing in on Matthew. Its fierce momentum was terrifying. This troll was a high-level warrior. Hey, a thunderous shout echoed across the battlefield, reverberating through the troll's ears, freezing it in place mid-charge. High-level combat technique, Roar of Fury. Arnold, regulating his breath, charged forward and brought his massive sword down on the troll from above. As the blade descended, the troll snapped out of its stupor and raised its black short sword to block. Clang! The clash of powerful forces sent sparks flying, and regret flickered in Arnold's eyes. If he had been 20 years younger, his physical prowess would have allowed him to overpower the troll before it could react. But now, all he could do was watch as the troll withdrew, forcing himself to resist the urge to pursue. Adjusting his stance, Arnold prepared for the oncoming onslaught of trolls. Angela was about to rush to Matthew's defense when he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice calm and certain. "Keep leading the battle. I'll handle them." Matthew said this because he could see that the soldiers by the river were rushing toward them, and the trolls from the left side were closing in. Just as before, Angela chose to trust him without hesitation, turning her attention back to the soldiers and refortifying their defense lines. The pressure now fell on Matthew, as Yea stood ready once more, her eyes locked on the dozen trolls charging toward them. The surrounding wanderers began throwing out smoke bombs, clouding the trolls' path. The seasoned veteran Hall quickly ripped open a scroll. Web, a second-level spell. A massive web fell from the sky, landing perfectly at the front of the charging trolls, entangling them in sticky strands. Hall didn't target the high-level troll, knowing that web likely wouldn't hold it. Instead, he focused on catching as many of the ordinary trolls as possible. His strategy paid off. Over 2/3 of the trolls were ensnared, and the rest was separated. Before Hall could react, oily liquid splashed across the ground, engulfing the trapped trolls. Moments later, flames erupted, engulfing them in a fiery blaze. Please add to your collection and subscribe. Announcement: a big thank you to 14 for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 94, Surprise or Not. Chapter 94, Surprise or Not. Hall never expected the Lord's spellcasting coordination to be so swift. Faster than most spellcasters he had ever seen. Is the Lord really just a low-level arcanist? Or are arcanists really this powerful? From all the wizards, warlocks, and clerics I've seen at his level, none of them can even compare, and even though he's using scrolls, the sheer number of spells the Lord casts is staggering. While Hall was lost in thought, the remaining 7 or 8 trolls had already bypassed their burning companions and were charging straight for Matthew. The trolls were furious, feeling humiliated by the destructive power Matthew unleashed so effortlessly. The high-level troll had learned its lesson this time, warily eyeing Matthew's possible tricks and not rushing in alone. Instead, it charged with the others in tow. Not far off to the right, troll soldiers and warriors were locked in a fierce battle with the soldiers. The soldiers on the left, having regrouped, were fending off the regular trolls with relative ease. The trolls' strength and weapons weren't enough to break through the shield-bearing soldiers, who firmly held their ground. The formidable Bezib, along with more than a dozen barbarian soldiers, was wreaking havoc on the battlefield. Meanwhile, some opportunistic adventurers, noticing the stalemate, joined the fray, attacking the smaller group of trolls on the right. The more astute adventurers, knowing the saying, if the nest falls, no egg remains unbroken, headed to the left, supporting the soldiers with ranged attacks to ease the defensive pressure. Alice and her group of adventurers were closing in on Matthew's position. They knew full well that whoever controls the money is the most important. Protecting Matthew meant turning captured trolls into solid gold coins. Not to mention, if they saved the Lord, their rewards would undoubtedly be greater than capturing a few trolls. The trolls had surrounded Matthew, yet he remained focused on the outer battlefield. The soldiers were fighting with remarkable determination and showed excellent teamwork. Though there were already over a dozen casualties, they still held the trolls at bay. But the longer the fight dragged on, the more it would favor the trolls with their extraordinary regeneration abilities. It's time, ignoring the regular trolls, Matthew locked his gaze on the approaching high-level troll, raising his staff and chanting loudly. Startled, the high-level troll instinctively dodged to the side. But nothing happened, there was no attack. The troll looked up at Matthew, who was smiling calmly. His staff emitted no mana fluctuations at all. Had it been tricked? No more spell slots. A spellcaster without spell slots was no stronger than a lamb ready for slaughter. The sacrifice to my god has arrived. The high-level troll felt certain, gripping its short sword, which trembled as if excited to drink the blood of a human spellcaster. It lunged forward, its massive body crouching low, demonstrating speed beyond an average troll as it darted toward Matthew like a coiled spring. High-level skill, assault. This troll actually possessed a complete assassin's skill set. How strange. Yet instead of fear, Matthew felt a surge of absurdity and anger as he watched the troll's charge, multi-classed as an assassin. Did it really think it had me cornered? The troll was correct in one aspect. Matthew was indeed out of mana, unable even to cast spells from scrolls. But he had experience points. A total of 15,000 experience points. Spend 2,000 experience points to level up Arcanist to level 3. Arcanist level increased, mana replenished, maximum mana increased to 270. As Matthew leveled up, he could feel mana flowing from the depths of the weave, cleansing and rejuvenating his soul. His understanding of the arcane deepened, and he became more attuned to the structure of the weave. In simpler terms, Matthew's abilities had taken a significant leap forward. Knowledge +3, now 201, legendary. Meditation +4, now 164, transcendent. The mana replenishment was merely a side effect. Resisting the urge to continue leveling up, Matthew knew the dangers of doing so. Leveling up once or twice in a month was rare, but not unheard of. But leveling up multiple times in one day, that would definitely raise suspicions. Raising his staff again, Matthew faced the high-level troll, which had closed the distance to just 4 or 5 meters. This time it showed no intention of dodging, thinking arrogantly, "Fool me once, shame on me." But now, a multicolored beam of light shot from Matthew's staff, hitting the high-level troll dead on. Ding, you have cast sleep at level 5 on an 11th level troll assassin. Willpower check in progress. The target failed the willpower check. The spell succeeded. The high-level troll assassin, mid-assault, suddenly faltered, its eyes glazing over as it forgot how to control its body, stumbling forward. It had intended to outpace the aging Arnold and reach Matthew to deliver a fatal strike. But it never expected that, as a high-level class, it wouldn't be able to resist Matthew's first-level spell. The sleeping troll assassin wouldn't understand that Matthew had specifically chosen sleep, because he knew it couldn't resist it. If it were a high-level warrior, maybe it'd make sense. But you're just an assassin, how could you be so cocky, sneaky, and always looking for a one-hit kill? That's what a real assassin does. This direct assassination approach. You clearly haven't been beaten enough. Matthew's eyes gleamed as he quickly cast another spell on the slumbering high-level troll assassin. The troll, still stumbling forward, was about to collapse from its inability to maintain balance. Once it hit the ground, it would likely wake up from the shock. But it wouldn't live to see that moment. Arnold charging forward, even in his old age, lacking his former speed and explosive power. But against a defenseless enemy, he could still keep up. Without hesitation, Arnold brought his greatsword down. Crack! The troll's hard spine blocked the sharp, heavy sword. But Arnold's strength broke through, cutting deep into the troll's body. Arg! The slightly frail figure of the troll crumpled to the ground. The immense pain jolted the high-level troll assassin awake, unleashing a blood-curdling scream. However, with its neck half-severed and blood spraying everywhere, not even its extraordinary regenerative abilities could save it without immediate treatment. Trembling in fear, it clutched its gushing throat, attempting to rise, but a dark green streak of light struck its head. Splat! The highly destructive Melf's acid arrow pierced straight through its skull. Ding! You have killed an 11th level troll assassin. You gained 1,000 experience points and 1 skill point. Surprising people, that's what spellcasters do best. Matthew lowered his staff slowly, meeting Arnold's amazed gaze with a slight smile. Suddenly, a black spear flew through the air, piercing Matthew's chest in an instant. Chapter 95, The Shadow Hunter. Chapter 95, The Shadow Hunter. No. Huh? Arnold's frantic shout abruptly halted as the Matthew who had been impaled by the spear vanished into wisps of light, disappearing completely. It was merely an illusion. Even so, Arnold remained on high alert, glancing toward the direction the spear had come from and shouting, "Watch the left flank, there's a high-level troll hiding there." As he spoke, Arnold noticed the markings on the dropped spear, which made him shiver with recognition. He yelled, "That's a shadow hunter's mark. Beware of its thrown spears, rogues, find its position. A shadow hunter." Hidden in the shadows, Matthew raised an eyebrow, recalling information about the shadow hunters. They were an advanced class for rangers and hunters, and a particularly powerful one at that. Not only did they possess formidable ranged assassination skills, but they were also exceptional in close combat and proficient in the use of poisons. Some of the best shadow hunters even had some degree of spellcasting ability. Facing such a profession's assassination attempts could be almost impossible to defend against. Just like what had happened to Matthew earlier, if it weren't for his decades of adventuring experience and the innate instinct of an arcanist to avoid direct danger. He could have easily been killed by that sudden spear. Normally, after encountering such a deadly opponent and narrowly escaping with their life, a spellcaster would retreat from the battlefield to safety, prioritizing survival. But Matthew wasn't panicked. In fact, he found the situation almost amusing. "It wasn't for nothing that I set this whole scene up." Finally caught the real threat. Just then, a chorus of roars echoed from the right as over 100 trolls, large and small, charged forward with various crude weapons. Matthew glanced at the now faded -3 mark and couldn't help but smile as he said clearly, "So, everyone's here now." Tom shouted to psyche himself up, but then came a dull, whistling sound as something rushed towards him. He quickly raised his shield. Clang! The terrifying impact left his shield slightly dented. Tom staggered back a step, feeling a wave of pressure in his chest. His blood churned, and his right arm holding the shield was so numb he could barely lift it. The massive troll soldier roared in excitement, raising its hammer again to strike. Feeling faint with fear, Tom grit his teeth and braced his shield, though his legs wobbled and his hands trembled. He had no confidence left to block such a ferocious blow. Crossbows, a clear voice cut through the air, and a series of whoosh sounds followed. Tom, in disbelief, saw the troll, its body riddled with arrows which had been withstanding the blows, suddenly stagger back with a scream. He focused and realized that the arrows in the troll's chest were as thick as thumbs. The force of the arrows was immense, their destructive power tremendous. The troll's armor had been pierced, and the arrows embedded themselves deeply. The troll shuddered as it tried in vain to pull the arrows out. Moreover, the barbed arrowheads continued to make the troll bleed, and a strange numbness began to spread from the wounds. The wounded troll was clearly weakened. Seeing this, Tom's spirits lifted, and he raised his shield again, surging forward. The barrage of arrows gave the soldiers a much-needed morale boost. The giant trolls made excellent targets. Even their extraordinary regeneration abilities couldn't ignore the damage from the crossbow bolts. At that moment, Angela pulled out her final prepared scroll and tore it open without hesitation. A bright green light flowed into every soldier, rapidly healing their internal and external wounds. Even their depleted stamina was quickly restored by the verdant light. The soldiers, now back to full strength, cheered and not only held their lines but began pushing back the injured trolls. This potent magic was one of the battlefield's most renowned spells. The 7th-tier high-level spell, Mass Cure Wounds. The market price of this single scroll was a staggering 7,800 gold coins. This was last month's largest expenditure for Bay Village, aside from paying troll bounties to adventurers. Angela had felt a pang of regret as she cast the spell, but seeing its miraculous effect, she quickly put her feelings aside and ordered the nearby rogues to switch to more powerful crossbows. In an instant, the trolls fighting the soldiers began to be pushed back, with several struck in the head by bolts and dying on the spot. Finally, effective damage was being inflicted on the trolls. And yes, so far, the one who had inflicted the most damage on the trolls was Matthew, the arcanist lurking in the shadows. He had taken down 26 trolls, leading by a wide margin. Second was Bezib, the barbarian warrior with extraordinary strength who could overpower the trolls. He could decapitate a troll with a single blow, rendering their regeneration useless. Even so, Bezib had only taken down 8 trolls. After witnessing his power, the trolls stopped fighting him one-on-one, opting instead to attack in groups of 2 or 3. That was the difference between games and reality. All sentient creatures had their own thoughts. They could retreat, they could flee. The adventurers nearby were stunned to see that the soldiers of Bay Village were actually holding their ground against so many trolls. Are these soldiers really this strong? They're holding off an equal number of trolls. They won't last much longer. Over 100 more trolls are about to join the fight on the right flank. Outnumbered like that, there's no way they can hold. If it weren't for the trolls, maybe they'd have a chance. No helping it. Trolls have that insane regeneration. As long as it's not a fatal wound, they can heal even in the middle of battle. The soldiers aren't the same. Even though the Lord's rich and is throwing around potions and healing scrolls, that can only keep them going for so long. Exactly. Once they tire out or get injured again, the pressure's going to mount. It's a shame. If there were twice as many soldiers, they could focus their forces and take the trolls out bit by bit. Let's wait for the right moment and focus on rescuing the Lord. Maybe we should set some traps to slow the trolls down when the soldiers retreat. Not a bad idea. The experienced adventurers, having analyzed the situation on the battlefield, made some clear judgments. Though they were impressed by the strength of Bay Village soldiers, they still doubted the Lord would achieve victory. Many adventurers grumbled, wouldn't it have been better just to defend the camp? Chapter 96, Clay Golems Attack. Chapter 96, Clay Golems Attack. Under normal circumstances, the development of the battle would indeed change, as the adventurers had said. Even though the trolls barely cooperated, their fighting style was more like gang fights. But their astonishing strength and healing talent allowed them to become sticky foes on the battlefield, holding out for a long time. In terms of attrition warfare, the soldiers would naturally be at a disadvantage. Matthew also saw this, watching the last batch of elderly and weak trolls charge forward. This should be the last strength of this troll tribe. Matthew turned his head and made a gesture to Yaya not far away, who lightly leaped onto the top of the carriage and raised her head. Roar, a terrifying aura instantly spread out. The trolls, who had just been pushed back by the soldiers, suddenly felt waves of panic in their hearts. Many trolls trembled in fear, some even turned around and fled. Even the troll soldiers felt a flicker of fear in their hearts, and their attacks became noticeably weaker. It was as if they had encountered a natural enemy. The fear from their bloodline made them unable to resist. Dragon's might. A dragon. The hidden shadow hunter immediately noticed Yaya's beautiful and perfect body. A trace of excitement and cruelty flashed in its blood-red eyes. This is the best offering for my god. So the god's will was referring to a dragon. Since you've revealed yourself, don't think of escaping. Wait, what's that? Before the shadow hunter could gather strength to attack, the troll warriors he had pinned his hopes on couldn't even get close to the carriage where Matthew stood, let alone cause trouble for Yaya on top of it. They were caught by figures emerging from the ground. The shadow hunter immediately saw that these figures were not human. With tall, strong bodies, 2 sizes larger than adult trolls, and dark brown clay bodies, their identities were clear: clay golems. The first few clay golems that appeared were special individuals Matthew had spent 1,000 experience points on using his animate ability. They had 18 points of strength, and far exceeded the trolls in weight. Dealing with the few trolls that had walked right into the trap was easy. They captured them effortlessly. What shocked the shadow hunter the most was that from the carriages, more large clay golems began to emerge. 10, 20, 50. A total of 50 clay golems crawled out from the carriages, their heavy steps reverberating, their glowing yellow eyes shining, charging toward the trolls outside. As they marched forward, they chanted in unison, "Protect the territory, protect the homeland. The clay golems attack." The unprepared trolls were instantly dumbfounded. It wasn't until the charging clay golems crashed into them, swinging their massive fists, breaking their bones and tearing their muscles, that they howled in response. The pained trolls quickly counterattacked, but they only managed to make small dents in the clay golems, shattering a few pieces of clay. The clay golems, however, used their immense strength to perform grapples and heavy blows, controlling or pushing back the trolls. The shocked soldiers looked at the towering figures of the clay golems, while Angela's sharp command echoed in their ears. Coordinate with the clay golems, prioritize killing the wounded trolls. With the clay golems taking the front, the soldiers' defensive pressure instantly lessened, and their morale surged. Seeing the trolls fall into a disadvantage, anger rose from their hearts, and they became even bolder. Kill them! The excited Beelzebub suddenly decapitated a troll that had been grappled by a clay golem, remembering old John's words during their casual chat. Serving under the Lord has an additional benefit. During battle, you get extra rewards. The more enemies you kill, the greater your contribution. And the more advantage you have when distributing loot. For these trolls, killing just one is worth at least 5 contribution points. Beelzebub had a simple and straightforward understanding of the value of contribution points. 1 contribution point could be exchanged for at least 1 gold coin, or 2,000 pounds of food, enough to feed the entire tribe for a day. Having been hungry for so long, Beelzebub's desire for food and contribution points was immense. This drove Beelzebub to charge forward with all his might, leading the charge. The other barbarian soldiers clearly had the same thought. Coordinating with the clay golems, they charged forward with roars. The disorganized trolls' formation immediately fell into chaos. The troll soldiers at the front were pushed back. The trolls rushing from the rear collided with them. The space for maneuvering and exerting strength was completely compressed, and they could no longer pose any threat to the soldiers. The soldiers were overjoyed, and under Angela's command, reformed into orderly phalanxes. Coordinating with their spears, which constantly thrust forward, they became like a mouth full of sharp teeth, tearing into the troll ranks bite by bite. The clay golems and barbarian soldiers slashed deep wounds into the trolls' bodies like large blades. The neatly arranged phalanxes of soldiers turned into an unstoppable iron fist, crushing the wounded trolls into pieces. Sharp spears were thrust uniformly into the trolls' abdomens. The trolls howled as they tried to fight back, but they could no longer shake the soldiers' shield wall. The first wave of trolls fell, bathed in blood, and panic began to spread among the troll ranks. The advancing soldiers had already formed an invincible whole. With every step they took forward, they brought tremendous pressure and inflicted heavy damage on the trolls. The trolls collapsed. The troll soldiers at the front could no longer withstand the terrible pressure and retreated in panic. The ordinary trolls lost their minds, and as Yea let out another enraged roar, they turned and fled in a panic. The excited barbarian soldiers took the opportunity to slaughter them. They were too used to winning this kind of battle. Each of them became seasoned hunters. They were in no hurry to kill the remaining trolls, only slashing deep wounds into their legs, causing them to let out miserable wails. The screams of their companions made the trolls even more reluctant to muster the courage to resist, fueling their desire to escape. In order to flee the battlefield, the trolls discarded their heavy weapons, and if anyone dared block their way, they attacked without hesitation. This panic quickly spread, eventually turning into a total rout of the trolls. The shadow hunter, pushed back by the retreating soldiers, had no idea what had happened. All it knew was that once those towering clay golems entered the battlefield, the frontline troll soldiers collapsed. The shadow hunter was familiar with such scenes. It knew that even if it stepped forward now, shouting to rally the troops and reorganizing the defensive line, it would not be able to change this deteriorating situation, and the enemy would never give it that time. Bitter fear rose in its heart, and its mind was filled with endless prayers. Great God, we clearly followed your instructions. Why did we fail? If Matthew knew the shadow hunter's thoughts, he would certainly have laughed mercilessly. Your God just talks while I spend real gold coins. Each clay golem is worth 500 gold coins, and I have 55 of them here. Dropping tens of thousands of gold coins on you, let's see if you survive. Chapter 97, Victory. Chapter 97, Victory. Trolls were struck down as they fled, attacked from behind. Before they could stand up again, the charging clay golems would stomp heavily on their backs. Then the excited rovers would rush up. Using ropes and chains, they had prepared to tie them up before eagerly moving on to the next troll. The trolls that fought fiercely and viciously now looked like walking gold coins as they began to flee. Each captured troll earns a 50 gold battle reward. These were Angela's exact words during the final charge, which made the soldiers fight with even more ferocity, killing the trolls who ran around in panic. Ralph the steward coldly drew his rapier, staring sternly at the adventurers who were hesitating to approach. Only adventurers who participated in the confrontation battle and caused serious injury or death to at least one troll can join in the pursuit. Everyone else halt. In theory, greedy adventurers wouldn't listen to Ralph just because of his words. The main reason was what stood behind Ralph. Over 20 towering clay golems, along with more than 30 wounded soldiers and over 1,000 kobolds rushing in. The powerful Gold Fang and Silver Fang glared at the adventurers with slit-like eyes, ready to attack if they made any suspicious moves. A third of the adventurers happily joined the pursuit. Their support earlier had achieved unexpected results and would bring them a rich reward. Another group of adventurers wisely turned around and left, not wanting to leave a bad impression on Ralph. After all, they still had captured trolls in their hands, and only with Ralph's approval could they exchange them for real gold coins. Yet there were always some adventurers blinded by greed, trying to slip through unnoticed, mingling with the pursuing group. The trolls were fleeing frantically, almost powerless to fight back. This wasn't a pursuit, it was a complete gold grab. But then Gold Fang and Silver Fang dragged them out one by one, having received accurate information from Yaya. Ralph, in front of everyone, tore open 2 lie detection scrolls rather dominantly. The result, of course, was self-explanatory. In front of all the adventurers, Ralph cancelled the contributions of these few and had them detained, preparing to permanently banish them from Bay Village. This cold punishment instantly crushed any unrealistic ideas many adventurers had. The phalanx of clay golems once again demonstrated the Lord's immense power. No adventurer was willing to leave Bay Village, and most were somewhat gleeful at the fate of the unlucky ones who had been caught. With them gone, we'll all get more gold. Haha, that's right. Those fools thought they could deceive a spellcaster. What a joke, they'll never be allowed into Bay Village again. That's a pretty severe punishment. Severe. In other territories, those idiots would be lucky not to be thrown into a suicide mission camp for deceiving the Lord. If you ask me, those greedy fools should be kicked out before they ruin our reputation as adventurers. Never mind that, if we can't join the pursuit, let's hurry and search for any stragglers at the rear. Besides, everyone else is busy for the moment, so we can search other parts of the dark forest. Exactly. There are bound to be scattered trolls elsewhere, and it's the perfect time to make money. Any potential unrest was quietly extinguished by Ralph's skilled handling, his shrewd tactics making many adventurers more cautious. The Lord had already been incredibly generous, so it was best not to entertain any other ideas. Though fools are born every day, with the warning example set, even the most ignorant of monkeys would behave for a while. The soldiers pursued the trolls for about 300 or 400 meters before decisively stopping. They turned back to suppress the trolls whose legs had been slashed and who were unable to escape. Only about 70 or 80 trolls managed to flee, and most of them were the elderly and weak who had fled early when the situation turned bad. Matthew watched as Angela expertly cleaned up the battlefield, and he could clearly sense her significant progress. Once she returned and absorbed the experience from this battle, she should be able to break through to become a Tier 3 knight. By then, Angela's personal strength and command abilities would take another leap forward. The last resisting troll was cut down by Beelzebub, then bound hand and foot, becoming his trophy. A pleasant sound rang in Matthew's ears. Ding! Your soldiers have killed a total of 418 trolls, gaining 22,000 experience points. Ding! You have achieved a major victory, earning an additional 2,000 experience points and 2 skill points. Ding! You have changed the fate of 672 people, gaining 900 fate coins. The total experience points had reached 40,000. The precious skill points had increased to 5. Matthew now possessed 100 fate coins. A massive harvest. The abundant rewards made Matthew let out a small breath. Spending tens of thousands of gold coins was all for these things, after all. In theory, this amount of experience points was enough for Matthew to raise his class level to Tier 11, instantly stepping into the high-tier ranks. However, Matthew dismissed this tempting thought. Just 2 high-tier trolls had caused him so much trouble, and the even more dangerous Shadow Hunter had secretly slipped away. High-tier enemies were already this dangerous. What about the mastermind who once tried to assassinate him? That attack had taken place in the tightly guarded territory of the Sir family, from within the magic tower. It would take at least several legendary-level individuals to achieve such an effect. Matthew couldn't be so reckless. Simply becoming a high-tier professional wouldn't guarantee his safety. So he had to stay patient and bide his time. Moreover, during the intense battle, the image of the high-tier troll assassin being cleverly trapped and killed, in cooperation with the old instructor Arnold, still replayed in his mind. Level isn't the key. Talents, heritage, specializations, skills, attributes, and all sorts of equipment and money, all these together determine combat power. Not to mention, if he leveled up too quickly, the experience decay from killing enemies of lower levels would make gaining experience much harder. Unless absolutely necessary, Matthew wouldn't use this method. He had paid a steep price, but had ultimately secured victory. After being tempered by battle, the soldiers had become even stronger. Matthew couldn't help but smile brightly, while in his heart he pondered. Which aspect of my strength should I improve next? Announcement: a big thank you to Zenloa Alstora for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 98, Teach them how to spend money. Chapter 98, Teach them how to spend money. The golden sun cast its dazzling rays. The indescribable warmth illuminated every anxious face. Many people who had just finished work eagerly looked on. They had heard about the battle but didn't know the details, only that the Lord had won again. In the vast fields, the victorious caravan slowly returned along the distant road. At the front of the convoy, Angela rode with striking grace, surrounded by a halo of light, exuding both captivating charisma and authority. What left everyone stunned was the clay golems following closely behind Angela. They marched in lines of 5, their heavy steps perfectly synchronized as they followed behind her. The small nicks and marks from blades and spears on the clay golems made them appear even more real. The people felt the ground shaking beneath them, gazing at these legendary creations, their hearts filled with a mix of awe and pride. These were definitely creations of their lord, mysterious and powerful. Behind the clay golems were the tall barbarian soldiers, solemnly carrying 8 coffins, each containing a fallen comrade from the battle. Both regular soldiers and barbarian soldiers had made sacrifices. The cooperation in this battle had dissolved the old grudges and tensions between them, and they now regarded each other as true comrades. The families, who had already been informed of the deaths, tearfully watched the scene unfold before them. Unlike usual, old John did not have his usual playful demeanor, as he called out the names of the fallen soldiers, praising their courageous sacrifices. An unspoken emotion brewed, rooted, and blossomed in the hearts of everyone present. Behind them were the orderly ranks of soldiers. The blood on their bodies had yet to dry, and their wounds had not yet healed, but their steps were strong, and their presence carried an iron-blooded aura. No fear was visible in their eyes, only an indescribable resolve. With such soldiers protecting them, everyone felt an overwhelming sense of safety. "Protect the territory, protect the homeland," Instructor Arnold shouted, his face wrinkled but his eyes burning with fervor. It was as if he had returned to the glorious days of building the city, fighting and battling alongside his comrades. "Protect the territory, protect the homeland," all the soldiers shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens. They shouted again and again, marching step by step into Bay Village, returning with honor and medals. With wet eyes, everyone couldn't help but choke up, joining in with the loud shouts. "Protect the territory, protect the homeland." The endless fields echoed with the deafening cries. The sound spread far and wide, carried by the wind into the distance, lingering for a long time. Evening. After enjoying the victory feast, everyone walked around the village, excitedly discussing the scene they had just witnessed. Even the lowest-ranking soldier received 5 gold coins, enough to buy thousands of pounds of food. No kidding. "The soldiers are making too much money. It would take me years to earn that much. With that much money, how will they spend it? What else would they do? Buy land? The Lord never said the outside fields could be bought. Only those who made contributions like the soldiers can receive additional allocations. You could also join the land reclamation team. Although there's no salary, at least you get food. The Lord is so rich and generous." "You're right. Under the Lord's leadership, Bay Village might just become a small town one day. A small town. I think it'll be much more than that." Listening to the excited discussions around him and enjoying the respectful glances sent his way, Tom grinned like a fool. He held his coin pouch tightly, occasionally shaking it near his ear to hear the crisp clinking sound, his smile growing even more foolish. Patting his belly, he sighed in satisfaction as little Jixiang excitedly looked at her silent brother, seemingly remembering something and asking with some concern, "Brother, did you encounter any danger?" Many scenes flashed through his mind, but Jiffen shook his head silently. Noticing his sister's worried expression, he quickly smiled and patted the sheathed short sword. "No, we rovers were just providing support from the rear, far from the trolls." "That's right, a fan's crossbow aim was spot on. He saved me twice." Tom immediately chimed in, clumsily trying to comfort little Jixiang. With an exasperated look, Jiffen saw the worry in his sister's eyes and quickly shook his money pouch, speaking excitedly. "We won today's battle under the Lord's leadership. You wouldn't believe it when the Lord made his move, he released." Little Jixiang, being young, was quickly captivated by the mysterious Lord, her eyes filled with wonder as she listened to her brother and Tom recounting the tale bit by bit. Before long, the three returned home, and upon seeing the gleaming gold coins on the table, they all broke into expressions of joy and satisfaction. Reaching out her small, soft hands, little Jixiang carefully counted and caressed the coins, muttering to herself, "Wow, a total of 21 gold and 75 silver coins. So much money. How should we spend it?" Licking his lips, Tom thought of the delicious food at the inn and quickly said excitedly, "Let's go have a feast, buy a bunch of food, and finally try some white bread. PFFT, don't we eat white bread every day? 3 meals at the camp and 3 at Lucky's canteen were never short. Jiffen slapped his forehead and exchanged a glance with his sister, realizing they shouldn't be discussing this with such a fool. But soon, the two of them also found themselves puzzled, staring at the unprecedented amount of coins, feeling a bit lost. What should we do with all this money? Simple, provide better benefits for the soldiers and give them more opportunities to spend their money, seeing Ralph's somewhat puzzled expression. Matthew looked with interest at the old instructor Arnold, who was gulping down drinks and food, and continued speaking loudly. Provide specialized training tailored to each soldier's profession. At these words, Instructor Arnold immediately stopped what he was doing, turning around with excitement, asking in a deep voice, "Honorable Lord, does your family have a master in specialized training?" Glancing at the specialization analysis, Matthew unhesitatingly shifted the credit to the Sir family. Indeed, the Sir family once invested heavily in masters of this field to train better soldiers and professionals. I was fortunate enough to acquire some of their notes and documents. Arnold suddenly stood up, but then remembered something and scratched his head awkwardly. Despite his age, his actions were more like an impatient young man than a 100-year-old elder. My lord, A faint smile crept onto Matthew's face as he looked at the massive Arnold, who was even stronger than the barbarian warrior Beelzebub, and softly said, "Unfortunately, I'm not very interested in melee combat specialization." Arnold's eyes immediately widened, and he quickly pounded his sturdy chest, hastily saying, "I'm interested. I'd gladly sign a new confidentiality agreement. Done." Chapter 99, Excited Soldiers. Chapter 99, Excited Soldiers. Early the next morning, Instructor Arnold, having received the manual, shared the good news with the soldiers. "Everyone is in luck. Thanks to everyone's bravery in battle, the Lord has prepared a great gift for you all, to make sure you all become stronger so that in future battles, you can survive and make even greater contributions. All professionals can register here for special training. I can't say much about what exactly the training entails, but rest assured, it's an excellent opportunity." Arnold said this with a rare departure from his usual sternness, using a mysterious expression to secretly inform everyone. What could it be? Why was it only for professionals? Everyone's curiosity was piqued like a cat's itch, filling them with unbearable anticipation and intense curiosity. During a break in training, a significant number of professional soldiers slipped into Arnold's resting quarters. The other soldiers looked on eagerly, also wanting to find out more. But due to their lack of strength and fear of Arnold's usual toughness, they could only stay outside quietly. What made everyone even more anxious was that shortly after, the resting quarters erupted with exclamations of surprise, followed by silence, making every soldier even more curious. About half an hour later, the professional soldiers emerged, their faces filled with excitement, howling as they resumed their training. The other soldiers were full of doubt, unable to make sense of it all. What's so secretive about it? Is there something special? Jiffen, while sharpening his sword, curiously asked Leon. On the surface, he was inquiring, but in truth, he wanted to improve his relationship with Leon. He had seen Leon take down 3 troll soldiers on his own yesterday, holding the right flank. A young, talented man like this couldn't be overlooked. Leon shook his head slightly, not answering directly but smacking his lips with some concern. The training costs 10 gold coins and all the volunteers paid. For professionals, such specialized training is essential. Jiffen's heart skipped a beat as he caught Leon's implied meaning. He blinked thoughtfully, refraining from asking further and instead focused on training his body harder. First, become a professional, then think about other things. Many soldiers shared his thoughts, and soon a wave of training fervor swept through the camp. What interested Arnold the most was that the Lord did not reject the barbarian soldiers joining the training. In fact, he even subtly hinted at greater expectations for them. Arnold, understanding the Lord's intent, began to ponder how to teach the somewhat stubborn barbarian soldiers. Carrying several large sacks of wheat flour, Beelzebub nervously entered the door. He had been drinking with his comrades yesterday and only returned this morning. In the past, he would have returned even later, possibly drinking his entire reward away. But now, for some reason, there was a faint unease as he walked home. The wooden door creaked open, and Beelzebub suddenly remembered old John's words. It won't be long before the Lord starts building stone houses in batches, with the first going to those with the highest contribution. Back then, Beelzebub didn't think much of it, but now he wondered, will the Lord really give us one? Seeing Beelzebub return, several middle-aged women approached, taking the sacks of wheat flour off his hands, saying softly in his ear, "You've worked hard." Tana, sitting on one side of the living room, glanced at him before lowering her head again, focusing on a book made of customized parchment. A well-behaved little girl was carefully teaching her how to read, with a small smile of joy on her face that soon turned a little sorrowful. Beelzebub opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing, as several middle-aged women pushed him into the washroom where hot water had already been prepared. When Beelzebub came out, the little girl with braids gave him a sweet smile. "Papa, I'm going to school now." Before Beelzebub could respond, the little girl happily ran out the door, calling out to her playmates in a cheerful tone. Although her common tongue still had an accent, she could communicate normally. Beelzebub clearly felt something was off. Tana glanced at him, waved him over, and handed him a small book. "In the future, you need to study properly too. Just speaking isn't enough, you need to know how to read and write." Beelzebub scratched his head as he took the small book, staring blankly at the words inside and asking instinctively, "Why?" Tana sighed, picked up a work journal, and after hesitating for a while said, "We are part of the territory now. Someone has to record our history, right? Besides, we've been unchanged for thousands of years, which is why we lost to that empire. We only had language, no written words, no history, and we kept forgetting what had happened before. Now, we must work hard to make life better for the people around us." Before she finished speaking, Tana had already left, escorted by 2 middle-aged women. She had to go to work at the farm, preparing for the breeding of horses today. Beelzebub smacked his lips as memories of the past 30 years surfaced, filled with endless killing. Any occasional good memories had always been shattered by his own people. Yet in this short half-month, looking back, it had been filled with sweetness and happiness. Beelzebub reflected on this for a long time. Although it was difficult, he began to read bit by bit. Why are there so many words in the common tongue? Because for every new thing, the common tongue creates a new word. Won't there be thousands of new words over time? That's right, it will continue growing, and the more advanced it becomes, the more it grows. Isn't there a language and writing system that doesn't change so much? Matthew was momentarily taken aback by Yea's troubled expression. He gently patted her head, feeling the delicate, smooth texture of her dragon scales, and nodded with a smile. "There is, and it's easy to learn. Papa. Teach me?" Yea excitedly tossed aside the thick common tongue manual with her little claws, her black and white eyes full of anticipation. A flash of insight crossed Matthew's mind as he lifted his head, pondering the connection between Draconic, Elvish, and Arcane languages. With a slight smile he said, "No rush, we'll talk about it later." Yea nodded curiously, soon feeling sleepy again, and quickly fell into a deep slumber. Matthew unfurled a map, carefully studying the Troll Valley, and as he took out his notes, a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. "So that's it, there's something good here. Chapter 100, Go Seek Your Fortune." Chapter 100, Go Seek Your Fortune. Exploration Mission, Explore Troll Valley. For every recorded mineral deposit, resource point, troll camp, or terrain feature, you'll receive the corresponding bounty. Small vein, reward of 100 gold coins. And enjoy 5% of the profits for 10 years. Medium vein, reward of 500 gold coins, and enjoy 3% of the profits for 20 years. Large vein, reward of 3,000 gold coins, and enjoy 1% of the profits for 50 years. Discovery of basic magical materials or plant resources, reward of 5 gold coins, and enjoy 5% of the profits for 10 years. Discovery of intermediate magical materials or plant resources. Discovery of terrain exploration. Troll Valley is divided into 10 regions. For each region, the first 10 pieces of information collected. Report information using the communication spell. Locations will be assigned based on the reported information. Duplicate information will be deducted. And new information confirmed. Each region's bounty 1,000 gold coins. Discovery of small under 10 troll camps, reward of 5 gold coins. Discovery of medium under 50 troll camps, reward of 50 gold coins. Discovery of large under 500 troll camps, RD of 1,000 gold coins. Discovery of a troll tribe over 1,000, reward of 3,000 gold coins. All right, folks, go to Troll Valley and seek your fortune. Waving to the crowd, Alice finished announcing the Lord's new adventurer guide and returned to her adventuring party amid cheers of excitement. Holding her newly acquired enchanted crossbow, Alice recalled the Lord's eager attitude, amazed at his vast wealth. Facing the curious gazes of her teammates, she cleared her throat and said, "The 500 gold bounty will be split among the 30 of us." Seeing the smiles on every team member's face, Alice glanced at the complex expression on Chris's face and shared her long-considered plan. "Also, I'm planning to officially establish our adventuring team. After splitting the money, anyone who wants to stay with me can do so. Our focus will be on Troll Valley, where there will be even more wealth. Of course, considering the dangers of Troll Valley, you must be at least level 5 to join the exploration. Those below level 5 will continue to train and adventure in the outskirts of the Dark Forest." As Alice spoke confidently, the initially joyful adventurers began to entertain different thoughts. While the excited adventurers prepared to delve deeper into Troll Valley, Bay Village was making its own moves. Lumberyard workers led the way. They felled trees that blocked the path. Nearly 2,000 kobolds followed behind them, working busily. Some cleared stumps, some swept away brambles, others removed fallen leaves, and still more brought gravel from afar, paving the road. The keen-eyed adventurers quickly realized what was happening, with a trace of disbelief in their eyes. Are they building a road to Troll Valley? Adventurers who had witnessed the Lord's grand gestures became even more excited, diving headfirst into the depths of the dark forest with dreams of striking it rich. Ding! Your hired adventurer has killed a forest wolf, earning you 15 experience points. Ding! Your hired adventurer has killed a forest wolf leader, earning you 50 experience points. Ding! The pleasant sound of experience points notifications echoed continuously in Matthew's ears. As he watched the increasing experience points, he stroked his chin thoughtfully. The territory's expansion is on track, and the accumulation of living supplies is steadily improving. The potential for the territory's growth depends on whether the adventurers can locate that coal mine. Indeed, the reason he had invested so much to guide adventurers to help him develop Troll Valley was to locate the open-pit coal mine near Steel Nest, in the valley from his memories. On the surface, he had been directing the kobolds to dig waterways and build roads, but in reality, they had already begun secretly mining iron. Just having mountains of iron ore wouldn't fetch a good price. But if the open-pit coal mine in Troll Valley could be found, combining the two would unlock the real growth potential of the territory. To prepare for the upcoming orc onslaught, Matthew had to accelerate the development of the territory. This was also why he led the soldiers to proactively strike and eliminate the main force of the troll tribe. With enough steel, the territory could forge better weapons and equipment for the soldiers, produce more heavy crossbows, and begin mass training and building an army. However, Matthew wasn't in a rush. Without enough strength to protect it, even the best developed territory would be just a gift for others. This brought him back to the original question: how to improve his combat strength as much as possible without leveling up. How can I convert these 40,000 plus experience points into skill or specialty experience points, or even attribute points? Searching his memory, Matthew actually found two methods. Checking the time, Matthew left the study and handed a large stack of arcane knowledge test papers to a still drowsy Rebecca. Give these to Lyanna and tell her I'll check them tonight. The groggy little fool nodded blankly, picking up Yair in her arms as she wobbled off to another room. Matthew was worried she might fall asleep halfway there. Soon, Steward Ralph returned. His presence had grown stronger, and his every movement exuded a faint aura of authority. Matthew was surprised to find that Ralph had reached level 5, just one step away from becoming a mid-tier professional. It seemed that the rapid development of the territory had brought Ralph some unique insights. As usual, Ralph reported on the progress of the expansion, the stockpiling of supplies, and the construction of houses for the next batch of settlers. Finally, he handed over the materials list Adam Smith had delivered yesterday, carefully reminding, Mr. Adam Smith mentioned that someone has taken notice of him. Matthew raised an eyebrow, quickly understanding why. Adam Smith had been selling a large number of blood-replenishing potions, and even under the Sir family's name, it had still attracted attention. Indeed, this was the reality. However, Matthew had prepared for this. As he reviewed the basic materials, his eyes fell on 50 earth elemental crystals, and a bolt of inspiration struck. He vaguely remembered hearing a story, a topic of banter among players. In the first 2 months of the game, a player with extraordinary luck had accidentally joined an auction of relics in Blood Moon City. During that auction, the player spent 100 gold coins to buy a pile of golem parts. It turned out that while dismantling the golem parts, the player found a treasure worth tens of thousands of gold coins, a legendary earth elemental crystal. Besides the intrinsic value of the legendary earth elemental crystal, it has a crucial use, building an elemental energy pool to power a mage tower. Matthew's heart skipped a beat. He calculated the time and realized it was only 2 days away. Should I leave the territory? Would that give the mastermind an opportunity? Matthew clenched his fists. He had to go. I can't live in fear forever, and there might be an opportunity. Announcement: a big thank you to Shadow Masters 07 for joining my Patreon. Your support means a lot to me. Chapter 101, Illusion Doppelganger. Chapter 101, Illusion Doppelganger. Matthew carefully browsed through the attribute panel, his gaze settling on Illusion Spell LV4. Illusion Spell LV4 creates a realistic illusion with 0 defense and 10 HP. The illusion cannot attack and possesses all of the target's habits, cognition, and appearance. The illusion lasts for 6 hours and can be controlled through conscious projection. Consuming 5 skill points can upgrade it to LV5, but would upgrading to LV5 satisfy all of Matthew's ideas? It seemed that the system had detected Matthew's thoughts, as it soon displayed deeper information. Do you want to consume 5 skill points plus 500 fate coins plus 5,000 experience points to enhance and upgrade this skill? Was the system this intelligent? Matthew didn't think too much about it. He first signaled for Steward Ralph to leave, then slowly closed his eyes. Yes, a brilliant blue light continuously flickered in the depths of his soul. Fine threads gradually traced out a more complex pattern on the surface of little Matthew, the construction of a spell model. The thought had just crossed Matthew's mind when the scattered model slowly settled into his body, solidifying the somewhat ethereal little Matthew. As the process gradually came to an end, Matthew could clearly feel that little Matthew had gained a sense of solidity, closer to reality. Could it be that as one's power grows, the soul gradually becomes closer to the physical realm? This might explain how demons turn souls into soul crystals and how gods create petitioners. Moreover, the stronger a spellcaster, the higher their success rate of transforming into a lich. This could be the reason. The reflection in his body manifested as even greater control over his mana. Feeling the changes in his body, Matthew exhaled slightly and looked back at the system display. Illusion Doppelganger LV5 consumes 100 mana points to create a realistic doppelganger with 0 defense and 50 HP. This doppelganger has 1/3 of the main body's abilities, possesses all of the target's habits, cognition and appearance, and has anti-detection capabilities. It can be controlled through conscious projection. The doppelganger only disappears when its HP reaches 0 or the spell is cancelled. Matthew involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though he had already anticipated the power of the fate modification, he hadn't expected it to be this strong. The illusion doppelganger would persist indefinitely. This meant that whenever Matthew used it, he would have a permanent doppelganger. He could use this doppelganger to explore, even venture into dangerous areas, without worrying about his own safety. As a top-tier player who had witnessed many unconventional strategies, Matthew had already thought of hundreds of ways to use this illusion doppelganger. He even greedily wondered why the illusion doppelganger wasn't treated as a new LV1 skill. He would have gladly spent more skill points to strengthen it further. After putting aside these small fantasies, Matthew decisively cast the skill on himself. A peculiar sensation washed over his body. Matthew felt the skill sending a request to his mind. He could selectively inject certain memories and abilities into it. This would prevent the doppelganger from revealing any of his secrets if it were ever controlled. Matthew sent in basic habits and corresponding spellcasting abilities. As 100 mana points were consumed, a figure identical to Matthew appeared. Matthew smiled slightly at it. The doppelganger smiled back. Steward Ralph walked in and immediately saw two Matthews standing side by side, freezing in place for a moment. Matthew waved at him and the doppelganger made the same gesture, saying, "Can you tell the difference?" Speaking in perfect unison, the sight left Ralph a bit dazed. The illusion doppelganger remained motionless as Ralph approached and examined them closely, but he couldn't find any flaws. He quickly came to his senses, looking at the reflection of his face in the illusion doppelganger's eyes, clicking his tongue in amazement. "Congratulations, my lord, for making further progress on the arcane path. I couldn't tell them apart at all, it's incredible." Matthew knew this wasn't flattery from Ralph. He nodded in satisfaction and turned to enter the secret room, sitting cross-legged and closing his eyes. Conscious projection. Matthew felt a moment of darkness before light returned. He savored the feeling of the much weaker body and carefully noted the flow of mana within it. It reminded him of playing a game. However, he quickly dismissed that thought. He glanced at Ralph, who was still in awe, and put on a spare dimensional belt, donned a black robe, and took out an ebony staff. Ralph noticed Matthew's outfit, recognizing the Sir family crest on the cloak, and nodded in understanding, asking excitedly, "My lord, your illusion spell has improved further. Even I couldn't tell the difference. This ensures your safety." Without elaborating, Matthew simply nodded, sitting down and feeling the subtle differences between the doppelganger and his main body. At the same time, Matthew remained aware of the situation around his main body, ensuring that focusing on conscious projection wouldn't leave him vulnerable to danger. Furthermore, Matthew could pause the conscious projection at any time, return to his main body, and then resume projection later. It was incredibly convenient. Reflecting on his earlier conversation with Adam Smith, Ralph hesitantly asked, "My lord, are you planning to go personally?" Rubbing his fingers lightly, Matthew glanced at the list and explained, "Not yet. We won't make a move right now. Until we are strong enough, any move that fails to deter others will only expose our weaknesses. Send 2 teams of clay golems to Adam Smith, marked with the Sir family insignia, and have him purchase a small teleportation array." Feeling the very real sensation of his fingertips, Matthew couldn't help but smile faintly and aid, "If necessary, we can teleport a small force to support Adam Smith." Ralph nodded, noting everything down while also realizing that Matthew seemed quite satisfied with Adam Smith. However, Ralph couldn't help but feel a strange sense of anticipation when he thought about the adventurers soon exploring Troll Valley. He asked, "Shall we continue capturing trolls?" If we delve deeper into Troll Valley, it might lead to some adventurer deaths. Knowing how large the market for potion production would be, Matthew naturally nodded. To earn more, sacrifices are inevitable. In a few days, I will personally lead the team. Chapter 102, the -5 Catastrophe. Chapter 102, the -5 Catastrophe. The illusion doppelganger doesn't continuously consume mana. This is one of the reasons it can persist indefinitely. The flow of mana is almost identical to the main body, and although its damage is reduced to 1/3, it's still stronger than a regular spellcaster. As for other arcane spellcasters of the same level, I could probably hold my own against them in a couple of days. After the professional soldiers finish their training, I'll need to earn more skill points. After spending over half an hour, Matthew emerged from the secret chamber. Having confirmed the basic combat power of the illusion doppelganger, it was equivalent to an elite level tier 3 spellcaster. Its challenge rating could reach 5+. Of course, this was without calculating the power of money. Returning to the study, Matthew flipped through the supply list, appreciating the realistic texture of the paper and marveling at the convenience of arcane magic. Unfortunately, just becoming an arcane scholar who only explores magical secrets won't change my fate. With a small grumble, Matthew quickly recovered, noticing the approaching footsteps of Ralph and Adam Smith. He turned his head and was immediately stunned. Adam Smith's head was covered in a blood-red aura, his face full of smiles, yet his brow was pitch black. Goodness, is this what they mean by a darkened brow? Startled, Matthew quickly checked Adam Smith's luck value. -5. Catastrophe imminent, a man doomed to die. Matthew then glanced at Ralph. His luck value remained unchanged. It seems that Adam Smith is facing danger once he leaves Bay Village. Interesting, could it be danger in Blood Moon City or something on the road? Judging by previous experience, the danger should appear soon. In that case, Adam Smith is likely to face fatal danger today. Is this aimed at me? Or at him? Is it the hidden mastermind, or is it due to Adam Smith himself? Various thoughts flashed through Matthew's mind, but he quickly calmed down and carefully formulated a plan. I can't abandon Adam Smith casually. He's a clever and useful tool, and we've built a certain level of trust. Finding a replacement would be too time-consuming. Besides, since someone has already set their sights on Adam Smith, I can use him as bait and a first line of defense. After a brief consideration, Matthew made his decision. Adam Smith must be protected. Consume 100 fate coins. Ding. Destiny's choice activated. Option 1, abandon Adam Smith, sever the tail to survive, +3 luck, and enjoy a streak of good fortune. Option 2, dispatch 20 clay golems to support Adam Smith, -3 luck, and face bloodshed and disaster. Thoughtfully smacking his lips, Matthew gradually understood the bias of Destiny's choice. Abandoning Adam Smith would give Matthew time to develop without being exposed, allowing him to accumulate power in the meantime. Hence, the luck would be positive. On the other hand, if Matthew resolved Adam Smith's danger, he himself would bear the brunt of it. However, because Matthew had grown stronger and his forces had developed, his ability to handle the danger had increased. What would be fatal to Adam Smith was much less dangerous for Matthew. Still, the sudden changes and enemies would cause Matthew trouble. Having made up his mind, Matthew quickly put his plan into action and walked out of the study. Adam Smith and Ralph immediately fell silent and bowed as Matthew approached. Ralph was a bit perplexed. Even though the Lord had just demonstrated it, he still couldn't tell whether this was the real Matthew or the illusion doppelganger. It was just too realistic. Adam Smith, unaware of Ralph's thoughts, immediately began pondering as usual. Does the Lord have something special to tell me? Matthew didn't think too much about it and gestured to Ralph, who understood and stepped forward. Summon 20 clay golems, then head to the barracks and bring a small squad of soldiers here. Assign them to Adam Smith's command. Matthew didn't lower his voice at all. Hearing this, Adam Smith felt an overwhelming sense of joy. As a shrewd businessman, Adam Smith immediately understood the significance of the clay golems. He knew that even the lowest tier clay golems were not typically available on the market. They were exclusive to spellcasters. Clay golems required recharging, which non-spellcasters couldn't do. Still, Adam Smith knew just how valuable these clay golems were. At auctions in Blood Moon City, even a single clay golem could easily sell for 500 gold coins. The Lord had given him 20 golems at once, filling Adam Smith with delight. Bowing slightly, he said, "Thank you, my lord. I will redouble my efforts." Matthew split the commands into 2 phases, because summoning 20 clay golems only brought Adam Smith's luck down to -3, still a lethal risk. It wasn't until he assigned a squad of 20 soldiers that Adam Smith's luck finally returned to a safe +2. It seems that the shift in power allocation is the key here. The danger Adam Smith faces may not necessarily involve direct combat. The enemy might reconsider if they see him accompanied by clay golems and trained soldiers. If that's the case, it all makes sense. Indeed, displaying power is a strategy in itself. Without showing any emotion, Matthew glanced outside, then nodded and said, "Each time you go to Blood Moon City, take a batch W. Ith you and replace them on the return trip." Hearing this, Adam Smith was even more pleased. The soldiers were secondary. Even if they were elite, they wouldn't have much effect without actual combat. But the 20 clay golems were different. They were not only a symbol of power, but also a status symbol. And for the Lord to give such high-quality clay golems so freely, it clearly shows that the Lord has even better resources. With these clay golems, no one will question my luck. It seems the Lord already recognizes me, as long as I keep completing tasks. Watching the grinning Adam Smith leave under Ralph's guidance, eagerly preparing to take control of the clay golems, Matthew silently rubbed his fingers together. The bait has been cast. I hope more fish bite this time. The enemy has revealed themselves. Rapidly improving strength is now a top priority. Laying low and developing doesn't mean retreating. Once the enemies are eliminated, I can develop in peace. Chapter 103, Remarkable Results. Chapter 103, Remarkable Results. Ding dong. A heavy axe cleaved through a blocking scimitar, smashing into a thick shield. Faced with an overwhelming impact, Leon chose not to withstand it head-on. He stepped back 2 paces along the force and rolled to the side, pushing off the ground with his arm to quickly get back on his feet. Beelzebub, however, seemed to have anticipated his movements, swiftly turning and taking 2 diagonal strides to close in on Leon. His precise judgment and immense pressure left Leon feeling considerable strain. Another axe swung diagonally toward him. Leon still didn't dare to block it head-on. After bracing his shield twice, he skillfully retreated to relieve the pressure. Despite suppressing the urge to go all out and crush Leon's defenses, Beelzebub methodically continued his attack, striking from different angles and directions with steady power. Although Leon appeared a bit disheveled, he was holding up against Beelzebub's onslaught. The barbarian warrior, while controlling his strength, watched the young man with admiration. "Is this what a genius is like? It makes you too envious to even feel jealous." In just half a day, Leon had essentially mastered the defensive stance and was performing excellently. When they first began sparring, Leon could only hold out for a few rounds. But soon, Leon grasped the key points and techniques of the defensive stance, and his endurance increased significantly. From initially holding on for just a few breaths, he was now lasting a full 5 minutes. Leon had even started attempting counterattacks after stabilizing his defense. Such progress left Beelzebub astonished, but it also made him feel dissatisfied with himself. As an 8th-level barbarian, even with his strength suppressed, he couldn't overpower Leon with his experience and battle skills as quickly as he should have. It was truly embarrassing. Bang! After another powerful strike, Leon, who was somewhat exhausted, couldn't withstand the force anymore. His scimitar flew out of his hand, and he barely held off the attack with his shield before collapsing to the ground, gasping for breath and waving his hand in defeat. No more, I'm out of energy." Twirling his axe, Beelzebub looked at the exhausted Leon and extended a hand to pull him up, laughing in his gruff voice. "Go recover quickly then. I think you'll succeed today." A hint of joy appeared on Leon's face. He could clearly feel his improvement, but suddenly he recalled something and said to Beelzebub with some fear, "Wait, didn't you say you were practicing the swift footwork feat? It's unfair. You're already so strong and fast, if your agility improves too." Just imagining that scenario made Leon realize that his hard days were far from over. Jolted back to reality, Beelzebub suddenly shivered, as if remembering something. "That's right. So what if Leon learns quickly? He still can't beat me, and I can learn too. As long as I have enough contribution points, I can also learn these feats that I never could before and become stronger quickly. The Lord never treated us like outsiders." Thinking back to the days of hard-fought battles where he had to figure everything out on his own, Beelzebub felt a sting in his nose, but he soon steeled himself. Before, there was no choice. Now I must work even harder. Protect the territory, protect the homeland. Beelzebub suddenly raised his hand high, letting out a thunderous roar. The others in training looked satisfied and inspired. "That's right. This is everyone's home." Resting Leon laughed heartily, raising his hand to join the others in shouting, "Protect the territory, protect the homeland." Matthew watched with a smile in his eyes. For regular professionals, once they grasped the basic principles and received detailed analysis, along with proper training and resources, their daily progress on beginner feats could reach 5%. In about 20 days, they could fully master a beginner feat. That's quite fast. But for someone like Leon, a genius with immense potential, it was entirely different. In just one day, he could master a beginner feat. The gap between a genius and an ordinary professional was truly vast. Nevertheless, Matthew believed, with so many resources invested, even these ordinary professionals would surpass most others. Perhaps among them there were a few late bloomers with hidden potential. Matthew didn't mind the resources he was willing to spend, especially in the Netheril Empire. Here, aside from the resources needed by spellcasters, other resources were quite abundant. Watching the professionals and soldiers train diligently, Arnold, who was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, let out a deep breath of satisfaction. In his younger years, Arnold once believed that even if he couldn't become a spellcaster, he could become a great figure, with his own territory and noble status. He worked hard leading troops into battle, fighting fearlessly even when surrounded by orcs. But reality struck him hard. The orcs were too numerous, and their strength and combat prowess far exceeded that of ordinary soldiers. In that battle, Arnold's forces suffered heavy losses. Barely 1 in 10 survived. He himself was gravely injured, on the verge of death. Just when Arnold thought his life would end in that moment, the arcane bombardment from distant spellcasters arrived. Thousands of orcs were torn to pieces by the terrifying spells. The crumbling fortress held firm once more. Arnold was both relieved and disheartened. The truth was clear: destructive spells were far more effective than his blade and sword swings. Having delayed his treatment for too long, Arnold miraculously survived, but lost the chance to further his strength.